Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 72. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday. Steelers Nation getting ready for the regular season finale. Hopefully not the Pittsburgh Steelers' last game of this season. Steelers Ravens kicking off game number 272, Sunday night at Acrisure Stadium for all the marbles. Dave got a jam-packed show today. It's going to be our first show of 2026, so Happy New Year to all. It might be our longest show of the year. We got so much to talk about. So, Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You know me. I'm worried about you and your voice, though, here, because, we could easily make this probably 3 hours. We'll try not to, but we do have a lot to get to here, so I'm not going to fill up a lot of time just rambling and stuttering at the stop. Let's get going here on Week 18.
And we have a great guest later in the show, Jonas Schaefer from the Baltimore Banner, who covers the Ravens. Of course, had him on before the Week 14 game, get his perspective and update ahead of Week 18. All right, Dave, let's get into it. The health of this team, let's just start there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's still some questions going into Friday. Of course, the final injury report will drop later today and give a lot more clarity when it comes to T.J. Watt. He has been limited Wednesday and Thursday. There's been a lot of mixed messaging in terms of will he or won't he play. DC Terrell Austin seemingly hinting that Watt will return. Austin telling reporters Thursday it'll be great to get TJ back. Ian Rappaport's had some very cluttered messaging, sometimes saying he's up in the air, sometimes saying he's inching towards playing. We're just not quite sure. Friday should be illuminating, but for a guy that has not practiced fully, it is still an open question officially whether or not Watt plays.
Yeah, that's the one we're keeping the eye on. And the Steelers, by the way, are practicing at Acrisure Stadium on this Friday. They've been practicing, obviously, indoors quite a bit. And Mike Tomlin's taking them out there, I guess, to just get acclimated with the weather and all, and the conditions and the field and everything related to that. But all eyes, obviously, will be on T.J. Watt going limited the last 2 days. I think he plays. I'm betting you think he plays. I think the question then becomes, how much does he play? We talked about that a little bit the other day. I can't imagine if TJ Watt thinks he's ready to go. It'll be hard to keep him on the sideline. Now, hopefully, as we mentioned, the Steelers keep their play total and how the length of drives will obviously play a part in that. The longer drives go, the more opportunity TJ Watt is potentially off the field here. But unless there's some sort of development that TJ just doesn't feel right and doesn't think he can go, I think he plays. And if he does play, I think he plays a lot in this one.
Yeah, it's hard to take that guy off the field, but given how physical this game is likely to be, we'll see what that rotation looks like. Not practicing Thursday was James Pierre, who popped up with an illness. It seems that was the reason why he went backwards instead of the calf, but he's still battling the calf. He has not practiced full in several weeks, and so his status also very cloudy for the weekend. Limited Thursday besides Watt, Calvin Austin III with a hamstring injury, Kim Hayward getting some rest, Malik Harrison with his knee, Brandon Echols, his groin injury, so all names to watch there. Sans Hayward, of course, he's going to play, practicing in full. Aaron Rodgers, Ben Skowronek, Christian Kuntz, no surprise there. But some good news on Isaac Seumalo, who got his first full practice in after his triceps injury against the Miami Dolphins, so he should play on Sunday night.
Boy, having Seumalo back after missing the last couple of games, it's hard to put X factor on an offensive lineman, but it obvious with this team losing Darnell Washington and how they like to run these jumbo packages with Spencer Anderson, it won't hurt to have Isaac Seumalo back in the fold at left guard for this game. And I'm not going to say that's the tipping point that could potentially, result in the Steelers maybe winning this game. But once again, it won't hurt having Isaac Seumalo back, especially after 2 games rest. And once again, the Steelers are going to have to figure out what they're going to do specifically in the running game attack, not having Darnell Washington on the field. We'll see what happens with Calvin Austin. Obviously, be nice to have Brandon Eccles back on the field, and then James Pierre, even if he suits up, will this team, being how this is going to be, you would think a heavy run attack with Derrick Henry, might we see James Pierre back at corner to help out with that physicality, or will this team roll with Asante Samuel Jr. on the outside?
Pierre would be the preference. He's a better tackler and run supporter and a bigger body than Samuel, but it may just depend on Pierre's own readiness. I think Austin's going to go. He seemed to indicate that towards reporters. So the names I'm really watching, Watt and Eccles, are the two I want to watch on this Friday report.
The interesting thing I did as part of my homework in here, 3 players that really either didn't play or hardly played on the defensive side of football the last time these two teams met was obviously Derek Harmon. They'll have him for this game. They didn't have him in that first game. Kyle Duggar. Remember, Kyle Duggar missed that game against the Ravens the first time around. I think we saw a lot of I think we saw a mixture of Peppers and Clark in that game. So they'll have Duggar for this one, and Asante Samuel Jr. only played 1 snap, I think, or 1 or 2 defensive snaps in that game the last time against the Ravens. So I just want to point that out. And obviously, Derek Harmon's going to have a real good game along with the rest of that defensive front to help control Derrick Henry and not let him go off.
Now, the cynicals say Pittsburgh had DK Metcalf and Darnell Washington in that first game and not the second. And what is the bigger loss there? It's probably the latter in terms of what they're gaining, but they are certainly gaining some valuable players, especially Harmon, as you said. From Baltimore's standpoint, they're pretty healthy. Lamar Jackson has been full all week. He declared himself 100% playing against the Steelers. He didn't say he was 100% health, but said he was getting healthier. He's going to wear some extra padding, I think, on his back. So just to give him some extra support there, the names to watch, and Jonas will talk about them briefly, and Rashad Bateman and Kyle Van Noy, the receiver and pass rusher respectively, both did not practice on Thursday. Bateman, an illness. Van Noy's been out with a quad. Van Noy might miss. Bateman will probably go, but everyone else should be healthy for Baltimore.
All right, so we have a little bit of intrigue to watch for on the Ravens side of the injury report Friday afternoon.
All right, Dave. Again, final injury reports will drop later today and really will tell us a lot about this game. Some housekeeping, some other Steelers news and notes. Pittsburgh handing out awards. Derek Harmon won the Joe Green Great Performance Award for the top rookie. No surprise there. And Patrick Queen won the Chief Award. Goes to the player with the best relationship and dealings with the media. Pittsburgh has not announced the MVP yet, which is a little unusual. Usually it's known by now. I assume that'll be announced today, and we discussed candidates on Wednesday's show. Rodgers, the likely suspect, but if not him, Kenneth Gainwell, maybe Alex Highsmith, could Jalen Ramsey, Cam Hayward be sleepers? We'll see, but Harmon and Queen officially winning awards.
All right, can we see a co-MVP maybe? I don't know. Aaron Rodgers stuffed the ballot box a little bit with those 4-wheel gifts. Christmas, maybe. I'll be surprised if Aaron Rodgers doesn't get it.
Where do you put one of those 4-wheelers? Hopefully these linemen have the space for it.
Someone brought up, I don't know, people say, yeah, that's a great gift, but these offensive linemen have got to go buy trailers now, and and I don't know, maybe trailers were part of it. I don't know, but they got to pay. They just got extended cost on top of being gifted, and I don't know how the gift taxes and all work. I'm not a CPA.
Oh, somebody brought up gift tax. Just enjoy the gift. Just enjoy things.
You can't just put something out there on Twitter without having an extreme other viewpoint in today's day and age. But that's just life in social media these days. But I'll be surprised if Aaron Rodgers doesn't win it.
Yeah, that's probably where this thing's going to go. I had somebody in my mentions whenever Alabama kicked the field goal down 24-0, defending that call. I don't know how you defend that call. That's the craziest decision. I got a lot of people also had a lot of Mike Tomlin jokes, so I should just not tweet. It's kind of the message here.
That's what they want to try to run you off the Twitter machine that way. It's got right. I ignore about 90% of responses that I get nowadays.
Good strategy. All right, Dave, some other news here. This is one interesting note that will probably apply after the season. This does not appear to be happening during Pittsburgh's season, which hopefully extends past Sunday night. But according to a Virginia Tech local reporter, the Steelers are having a coach poached to James Franklin's new coaching staff down there in Blacksburg. According to Colby Crawford, Pittsburgh Steelers assistant DB's coach Anthony Midget will be leaving the team after the season to take the cornerback's job at Virginia Tech, his alma mater, as Franklin is assembling that staff. And so, again, I think that's going to happen after the season, not an in-season occurrence, but Pittsburgh will have at least one coach to replace this offseason.
And there could be many more having to be replaced as well, too. So, that was that cropped kind of out of nowhere last couple of days.
Yeah, fans want a lot more coaches to be replaced, I'm sure. And I'm sure there'll be more coaching staff changes than just Anthony Midget. He was in his second year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been a pretty well-traveled coach at the NFL level, and I think college level too. So Pittsburgh, I think the secondary's done a nice job this year. I think Pittsburgh's obviously got a lot of DB-minded coaches, and Mike Tomlin, Terrell Austin, Jared Alexander, the official DB's coach, and Anthony Midget, his assistant. So Pittsburgh will have to replace him. Dave, Aaron Rodgers speaking as he always does this week, and not a ton of crazy things. He's very kind of calm, collected, getting ready for this game. But naturally, because this is week 18, it could be Aaron Rodgers' final game of 2025 with Pittsburgh. Questions about his future, and Rodgers initially sort of declined to really entertain the idea, and then talked about great experience in Pittsburgh. Certainly praised his time with the Steelers, but then talked about he'll probably have some options come free agency. So Aaron Rodgers' future now starting to come into focus.
Or is it? Or, it will a lot be decided on how far or not playoff run. You roll back to obviously his initial, or one of the talks he had with Pat McAfee's show, and then kind of walking back after saying initially that he was pretty sure this would be his last season. Will the Steelers want to continue to go down that road? What are they looking for potentially in the draft? Maybe free agency. You would think they would probably, and we brought this up on the show the other day, would they probably want, or would Aaron probably want a decision hard and fast before not long after the season, at least which way the Steelers are leaning. There's obviously the whole where else could Aaron Rodgers go? Minnesota's an easy link potentially, depending on how married that organization feels they are to McCarthy. But outside of just a handful of teams, even though Aaron Rodgers says he's sure that there potentially be some options, how many real legitimate options would there potentially be?
Well, all you need is another option to potentially have a question. If he does want to play, does he return to Pittsburgh? Now, you think there's a lot of reason for him to come back to Pittsburgh if he does choose to play a 22nd NFL season, given how good of a time he's had in Pittsburgh in his own words. But as you said, Minnesota decided against making a run at Rodgers last offseason. A lot of reporters think had they been in the mix, he would have signed with Minnesota instead, given the tight relationship with Kevin O'Connell and to play under him and go back into the NFC North, of course. So McCarthy, it's hard to really think he cemented this status for 2026. He threw 12 interceptions, 11 touchdowns, played in just 9 games. It's hard to think he's really, been pronounced as the guy. So I think Minnesota certainly could have more interest a second time around.
Who else other than Minnesota?
Well, again, it's a really quarterback-starved offseason. Not a lot of options. I don't know what other teams exactly will be in the mix, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was some other team that emerged, given that what other quarterbacks will be available that are attractive, that played better than Aaron Rodgers this year. Not many. Kyler Murray, Tua, those guys were not better than Aaron Rodgers this season.
All right. We'll definitely keep an eye on that.
And of course, all that assumes Rodgers does play, which he may retire. He talked about he'll have to talk with his wife and sit on it, and who knows when that decision will come. So that's first and foremost, does he want to play? If he doesn't want to play, that whole conversation becomes moot. And then, of course, if he does want to play, the question is with who? And we'll have that conversation, I'm sure, starting sometime in January. All right, Dave, let's go to the Steelers. Actually, one other news and note here. Should have mentioned this earlier. I don't think this came across before the Wednesday show. Pittsburgh officially placing tight end Darnell Washington on injured reserve, and so his season effectively over to replace his spot on the 53. Pittsburgh signing offensive lineman Jack Driscoll from the practice squad to the 53. So just a note there. Driscoll's been elevated 3 times. He was out of elevations. We'll see if he's needed with Seumalo coming back, but that is the official move.
Yeah, you have to. Will he end up being the inactive offensive lineman? I guess in this one.
I have some thoughts on that. We'll talk about whenever we
Okay.
go to preview this game. But did they make a practice squad move too?
Yeah, they swapped out. Seemed like they had a swap of
It
somebody,
was
didn't they?
Jaheim Bell. No, that was the move. They brought him with that workout we talked about
Oh, that's right.
Wednesday. Earlier this year, last year, I guess I should say, they swapped Bod and Porter, but Bell was added as H-back type, maybe doing a Ricard role on scout team this week.
All right.
All right, Dave, let's get to the coordinators. Arthur Smith, Terrell Austin speaking to reporters, and Arthur Smith asked about replacing Darnell Washington, especially on the tush push, and he says there is a backup plan there. You do wonder, and Smith really said that Washington's absence last week against Cleveland was not the reason why Pittsburgh did not run tush push on a 4th and 1, which was a deep ball to Scotty Miller, a 3rd and 1, which was a false start, turned into 3rd and 6. But if they do run tush push, who is the replacement pusher? We don't quite know.
You got to get somebody big out there potentially, right? So, and look, do you have any more wrinkles that you can run off of that thing on top of? The hope is obviously that you don't get in many situations where you have to use something like that, but not having a big guy like Darnell Washington is yet another, byproduct of negative of not having Darnell Washington for this game, and obviously beyond now that he's on IR. So, could you put Cameron Hayward out there? Could you put, I don't know, you got several big guys. Could you put Y.A. Black out there to kind of rep that? I don't know, but we'll obviously have to wait and see if they get into any situations where they have to use the tush push, and they've already had a couple of wrinkles off that, and can they build another wrinkle on top of that off of that? We'll have to see.
I'd put Spencer Anderson back there. He's gotten fullback work this year. He's athletic. Let him push Connor Hayward forward, but we'll see if Pittsburgh gets in that situation and what their plan is. I guess more interesting from Smith, he talked about the lack of a pass game, and in typical Arthur Smith fashion, a lot of word salad, said a lot of words, maybe didn't say a lot of information, but he did have one interesting note. He says, quote, "The results are what they are, but we had guys get open. We didn't make a play, and that's really the story of the first 2 games," end quote. And so talking about guys getting open, I didn't really see it on tape. I mean, I guess if you reference things like the Adam Thielen 4th down that Rodgers passed up for the deep ball to Scotty Miller, I guess you could argue at that sense, but it just felt like the Steelers receivers were pretty consistently locked up by Cleveland's cornerbacks.
Yeah, especially those last 2 possessions, right? We went 4 and out, and then the tail end, obviously, from the 4 plays starting at the initially at the 10-yard line. We had 1 completion in that, then 3 straight incompletions over to the MVS side there. So I don't know that unless he's also talking about Gainwell underneath, on that final play there, and look, Aaron's mind was already made up at that point. It is an interesting conversation as had he did go that way. Could Gainwell indeed scored in that situation? We'll never know the answer to that question though. But obviously, we pointed to MVS, or at least I did, thinking that your main components of losing that game to the Browns from an offensive perspective pointed to the play and the decision making of Aaron Rodgers. MVS not having a great game, getting separation, and then Arthur Smith obviously being in charge of that offense lent itself to the Steelers not having the offensive performance that they needed against a good Browns defense.
And on that final sequence, Arthur Smith simply said that things just didn't go the Steelers' way. He talked about the 4th down play. He thought that Valdes-Scantling ran a good route, that little double move, which was a good route, but you got to make the play, and Pittsburgh did not.
All right. What else was notable, at least?
That was really it. It was a lot of the conversation about the tight ends and the receivers, not a lot of information, truly there other than Smith saying he thought guys got open. Regardless of whether or not they got open or not, Pittsburgh has to go make some plays against Baltimore.
All right, I agree. All right, how did Terrell Austin enlighten us?
Well, the biggest thing were his comments about T.J. Watt. He says, quote, "So it'll be great to have him back. What capacity we'll find out really not until Sunday, but it'll be great to have him back. I would think he'll only strengthen our group and how we play and all those things," end quote. So seemingly Austin spilling the beans that Watt will suit up, but again, still watching his injury status for a guy that has not practiced in full in, almost a month at this point, I guess 3 weeks or so. So that was kind of the big thing. Did anything else really stick out to you, Dave?
Not overall, but boy, you talk about the impact that T.J. Watt can have, obviously as a pass rusher, and in situations, but against a team that in Baltimore that we expect to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry at least 25 times. I'll be shocked if it's not over that number. Something's probably gone horribly wrong where they're having to play from behind if they do that. But when we've seen T.J. Watt do such a great job, especially backside on some of those runs over the years with Derrick Henry. So I don't see how they win this game. Well, I mean, there are ways, but they if TJ Watt's 75, 80, 85%, that obviously can be a boost for the Steelers defense, specifically against Derrick Henry runs.
Austin giving a lot of praise for Alex Highsmith and his pass rush variety, which I think is certainly true. He's probably the most varied pass rusher that Pittsburgh has on the roster right now. And then also a lot of continued praise for Joey Porter Jr. He's playing just really solid football. I imagine he'll see a lot of Zay Flowers, which will be a tough matchup. So Porter to be tested again this weekend.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see with Lamar as banged up as he will. I think you still got to respect his ability to take off with the football. Look, he was banged up that last time and made a couple of he took off with the football a couple of times. I don't think he's going to be looking forward to that back getting hit on. So I don't know. Do you use you got to commit to the run. I mean, we know that. You got to have people in the box. You can't let Derrick Henry have a Derrick Henry game here. So I suspect we'll see a healthy mix of based on down and distance and situations of man versus zone. But I mean, you got to do everything you can to make, I think, Lamar Jackson beat you through the air, be in third and long situations, get situations where he has to maybe hold the football. Because if there's one thing that, regardless of his health, that Lamar Jackson has had some negatives with over the years is holding on to the football and turning it over, and that's going to have to be a big component of the game. That along with maybe seeing if you can get Derrick Henry to not 5-point handle that football and get it loose from him, like has been the case a couple of times this year. So, you all hands on deck, and you got to stop this run.
Austin talking about the run defense and the improvement the last 3 weeks. Pittsburgh's run defense, number one in the NFL over that span. He says, quote, Austin does, we're not running sideways, creating creases and holes. So that's really the big thing that helps us play well when our bigs are playing like that. Linebackers are able to play downhill, and it's a trickle effect. He talks about he wants to be able to see the numbers on the back of your jersey. If you do that, it probably means you're square, you're stout, you're not getting turned and washed and running down that line. And that's usually a good thing. But Baltimore, while Pittsburgh has the best run defense over that span, Baltimore has the best rushing offense over that span. So it's true good on good this weekend.
Yeah, look, you had a couple of snafus in that pass game against the Ravens last time. Flowers had a couple of nice catches and runs. And fortunately, they had a couple of drops in some key situations last time as they were driving in some games. And then it goes without saying how big of a play that was by Joey Porter Jr. on Isaiah Likely in the end zone that essentially won the game for the team, right?
Right. And finally, Austin also on Malik Harrison, who's facing his former team in Baltimore. You got a couple inside backers that are facing their former team, and Patrick Queen and Harrison, and Austin praising him as a, quote, stout run defender, certainly plays in big packages against a big personnel, and so Harrison will be needed. I think his run defense has been good. Probably still not a Landon Roberts level kind of hammer tone setter, but Harrison, of course, the whole front will be needed this weekend.
Yeah, and as we've seen in the past, dating back to Vince Williams days and all, you got to be willing to take on some of those pullers and sacrifice your body to help blow up a play. They'll pull. They do a lot of pulling in this offense, whether it be counters or power runs, or and they'll run both weak and strong side. They'll have Ricard in this thing as a lead blocker quite a bit. So part of that, somebody's going to have to sacrifice quite a bit to get a body on a body inside of a hole to hopefully make Derrick Henry move those feet a little bit and cut and give the rest of the defense a chance to not let him get downhill on you. And that's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw firsthand, and look, the the Packers, have had their issues on defense and losing Micah Parsons and some injuries and all, but Derrick Henry just had way too many runways, and not only him, the backup running back as well too. The Packers did a bad job of containing the outside on a couple of those runs and let who is it, Mitchell get
Keaton Mitchell.
Keaton Mitchell get outside on them a couple times. So even though you want to circle this thing all the way down to Derrick Henry, and that obviously is the crux of this thing, you better do a damn good job when Derrick Henry's off the field with a guy like Mitchell, because they'll still give him a handful of carries in this thing. And then the obvious situations in the run defense is when you're crashing down to maybe try to get the runs on Derrick Henry. How many times will Lamar Jackson just keep it on his own read and all? So a lot of things to worry about when it comes to the Ravens moving the football. I think Malik Harrison specifically has got to have a great game. Patrick Queen obviously has to have a great game. That whole defensive front's got to be downhill, strapped up, ready to go, because they're going to see a lot of that running game, specifically with Derrick Henry in this one.
Well said, Dave. All right, we're kind of getting to the Ravens talk, so let's continue that with our friend Jonas Schaefer, who covers the Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. You can follow Jonas on Twitter at Jonas_Schaefer. Also, check out their podcast. I was appreciated being a guest on their podcast earlier this week, so check out that as well. Let's take a pause and come back with Jonas.
All right, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Friday. It is Week 18, the final regular season week of the 2025 season. Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Winner take all for the AFC North. Loser stays at home for the playoffs. And obviously, with this being a big game and with the Ravens being involved, that means we have back on the show. Had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. Has been a regular covering the Ravens for some time now. Always enjoy having him as a guest. I am, of course, talking about Jonas Schaefer, and Jonas covers the Baltimore Ravens for the Baltimore Banner. And you can follow him on Twitter/X at Jonas_Schaefer. That's SHAFFER. If you're not following him on the Twitter machine, shame on you already. And he had a podcast episode released, the Banner Ravens podcast, just yesterday, that our own Alex Kozora was a part of. So make sure, at least of anything, before this game on Sunday night, maybe you get over there and listen to that episode, or at the very least the portion that Alex is involved with. So, long introduction there, but an old friend of the show, Jonas. Happy Friday, Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Thanks, guys. I'm a regular, as you said, but I'm also a regular incorrect picker. I think I don't remember the last time that I've been on with you guys and have correctly predicted the outcome of a Ravens Steelers game. So I'm looking forward to keeping up that trend with you guys.
Yeah, we're bad on this side. It's like a box of chocolates with this Steelers team. You never know what you're going to get on a given week here. Look, obviously, went into last week with the Ravens needing to beat the Green Bay Packers and getting help from the Cleveland Browns. All of that materialized. I've heard Harbaugh and all the coaches talk about how they were watching the game, and it feels like the Ravens obviously now are playing with house money, so to speak. But the fact of the matter is, these are two mid teams, if we want to be honest with ourselves here. But one has got to win the AFC North on Sunday night here. The big storyline going into this week was Lamar Jackson. Will he play against the Steelers? He came out yesterday and said, yes, he is. He's practiced full the last 2 days. Expect him to go full again probably on Friday. There's also been a lot of I guess what they'd call outside noise concerning Lamar Jackson. I know there was a story by Mike Preston that ruffled a lot of feathers. I know Lamar was asked about that yesterday. Let's start there with Lamar Jackson. He's obviously not 100% healthy, but he's healthy enough to play in this game. Going to play with probably some rib protection on. back protection as well too. But what about all this outside noise and all? Is there anything really to it? Is it anything that could potentially cause a little bit of a distraction for Lamar this week?
Um, it's tough to say because he is such an inscrutable figure. Like, he lets you know when he's frustrated. He lets you know when he's happy, but he just keeps such a tight circle that it's impossible for us to divine whether he's pissed off, satisfied, anxious, sick. I mean, there's just such a wall between the media and the fans and Lamar that is, I think, unusual for a position and for a player of that kind of prominence. So, obviously you have the contract situation hanging in the air, but he's still under contract through 2027. Obviously, the Ravens tried to negotiate a deal with him this past offseason. That didn't work. I don't know if it was because Lamar just, didn't get to it as a matter of homework, or if it's because they were kind of intractably far apart. So that's something to monitor. He's been asked questions about his relationship with John Harbaugh, who obviously has become an avatar of the Ravens' disappointments over the past couple of years, going to the postseason, going to losing Mike McDonald, when I think a lot of Ravens fans would have rather kept him than another few years of John Harbaugh, especially when you see what Seattle is doing right now in year two under Mike. So I think he's become just a proxy for a lot of people's feelings. And, as you guys know, like, there is, I think in this day and age, a lot more love and loyalty to the superstar than to the franchise itself. You see this play out in NBA terms all over. People are LeBron fans regardless of where he goes. And Lamar has only played in Baltimore, but I think he has such widespread adoration and affection here that, there are sure a few pockets of people who have had it with, him having slow recovery times, or him just not being what he should be in the playoffs, or this or that. But it's this interesting dynamic where you could say that, like, the player has become bigger than the franchise. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of franchises. You look at, Josh Allen and the Bills, Mahomes and the Chiefs. But now that we are at this state of, I don't want to say crisis, but near crisis, because of how disappointing the season has been, because of the somewhat thin ice that John Harbaugh might be on. A lot of people kind of read into the negative space. And obviously there's a lot of negative space that can be read into when someone is unscrutable as Lamar.
You look at what the Ravens did in their most recent game against the Packers, a game that obviously they had to have to at least keep their hopes alive there. I don't want to say reinvented the wheel with Derrick Henry, but obviously Derrick Henry was a main focal point of that offense with Snoop Huntley having to start at quarterback there. They just continuously ran the football. The Packers got tired as usual trying to tackle Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had a monster game. When you look at the Ravens this season, I think 19 or more carries for Derrick Henry. They are 5-2, and when they don't give Derrick Henry at least 19 carries, they are 3-6. And then you go back to last year, 8-1 when he gets 19 or more carries, and I think 4-4 when they didn't. Now, it's not just as easy to look at the stat book and say that, because game circumstances have obviously played a part in this. It's easy to look with optics on the outside and says Todd Monken and company just rediscovered Derrick Henry. But has this been more of a situation where it is just more game situation, that Derrick Henry hasn't gotten the total carries that he probably should in some of these games? Or is there some other element of just trying to outthink themselves in some aspect in adding in some of the passing game a little bit more?
Well, Todd Monken joked on on Thursday, yesterday, about how even with Derrick Henry going for a career high carries in Green Bay, he was still, kind of lashing his tongue at Derrick Henry whenever he asked off the field, because I think he knew one of the big sore spots for Monken this year has just been the lack of usage for Derrick Henry in some of these high leverage spots. You think back to that Week 16 game in primetime against the Patriots, where Derrick Henry was rolling, the offense was rolling. Then you get to that penultimate drive with the Ravens, needing a score to keep the Patriots at bay, and the Ravens have one set of first downs, Derrick Henry's not on the field. They get another set of first downs, Derrick Henry did not come on the field. And that was like a reason for revolt among Ravens fans, especially considering if John Harbaugh doesn't have the power to intervene there, what exactly is his job here? So big picture wise, I think the reason why we have not seen the kind of 20 to 25 carry Derrick Henry games as often as we did last year is just simply because they weren't running the ball well. Like they weren't run blocking well. Their success rate on design runs over the first half, first 60, 70% of the season was among the lowest in the league. But they finally, with the consistency of this offensive line, with a string of somewhat accommodating run defenses, they've really taken it to teams. One of the stats that I had in a story that was published on Wednesday was the gap in terms of total rushing yards since week 14 between the first place Ravens and the second place LA Rams is about the same as the gap between the LA Rams and like the 24th place New Orleans Saints. So they are just so far and ahead of everyone over these past 4 weeks. And obviously that's a span that includes that game against the Steelers, that this is kind of what you expected from the Ravens. And that's going to help lighten the load on Lamar if for whatever reason he's either unable to find guys or just inaccurate in general. You want to reduce the wear and tear. You want to reduce the workload on Lamar. And if you can get yourself a running game, that's a good bet to go for 200 yards in this one with 5.5 yards per carry. I think the Ravens would definitely take that and run with it. No pun intended.
Jonas, to kind of play off of that, there's been so much talk about the connection between Henry and refinding him in the run game, but it also feels like Baltimore has refound fullback Patrick Ricard. He's played his high snap count these last 2 games, playing over half the snaps. What's been his impact on the run game, and is he kind of the hidden factor of why this run game is successful?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the stats handy for this year, but it's always been interesting with Pat because he is just such a intimidating presence. But the on-off splits with him, it's always benefited the passing game more than the run game, which is what you would kind of expect when you look at like what the Rams have done with their 13 personnel this year. It's we're going to get this 300-pound fullback who can move pretty well onto the field, and you're going to have to match with heavier personnel, and then bam, we're going to hit you over the top with a play action, or Lamar's going to scramble against this slower base defense. But when you look at that Ravens Packers game from Saturday night, that was the most carries out of I formation for a running back in at least the last decade for Derrick Henry. He had I think close to 20 carries. A lot of those were lead zone runs where obviously he's just kind of finding a hole, getting to that second level, meeting that play side linebacker, and hoping that the offensive line can do the rest of Derrick Henry's bidding. So I think Pat Ricard's usage is inextricably tied to Derrick Henry's. Like when Derrick Henry is on the field and when the Ravens are moving the ball well, then you can expect to see Pat Ricard out there. That's just a kind of 1 + 1 = 2 kind of calculation. But also, I think you have to acknowledge that Pat Ricard, to start the season, was not all the way right. He was coming back from this kind of nagging calf injury that sidelined him, I think, for the first 6 games. So he's had to work his way back physically. But as with Derrick Henry and as with some of the guys on this offensive line, I think the hope with the Ravens is that just the wear and tear and the physicality that guys like Derrick and Pat and Daniel Faalele, when he's locked in, plays with, can be that kind of, it can have that kind of snowballing effect where dudes at this point in the season are nicked up. And it really takes a lot of mental fortitude to just be willing to stick your nose in there, knowing that it's coming against a smash mouth duo of Derrick Henry and Pat Ricard.
Before Alex asks his next question, let me throw some stats in here to talk about what you said about Ricard here. And these are just raw numbers, and obviously you go deeper into it. In the passing game with Ricard on the field, 8.02 yards per play versus 6.13 when he's off. Now, obviously, a lot more goes into that. And when the rushing aspect, it looks like, and this is all according to NFL GSIS, the official stats of the NFL, 5.28 yards per rush when Ricard is on the field and 5.24 when he's off. So there's not that much of a difference there, but there is points to what you said about in the passing game there being 1.89 yards difference when Ricard is on the field. Go ahead, Alex.
And actually, that Alex, before
Sure.
you just let me add a quick addendum there because it reminds me, Dave, of a great point. I think like one of the cool next gen stats data points that they had from a couple weeks ago was like Lamar has not been accurate this year, except when he's tried to play action passes. I think like his play action accuracy rate as of a couple weeks ago was second in the NFL's behind only Sam Darnold, or his yards per completion or yards per attempt was second in the NFL, only behind Sam Darnold. So it's been everything else that has been the problem for Lamar in the passing game. But when the Ravens have been able to find this run heavy script and give Lamar the opportunity to drop back and find guys over the middle, as you kind of expect from a Lamar Jackson type performance, that's when things have gone a lot more smoothly.
Interesting.
Speaking of the passing game, Jonas, is Zay Flowers a true number one, or is he just this offense's number one receiver? Can you kind of give that distinction, or is he a true and blue number one receiver?
It's an interesting question because I think your definition of wide receiver one will definitely vary depending on who you ask on the street. In terms of production, he's definitely been a wide receiver number one. I think he was, top 20 in yards per route run last year, despite being, one part of a very multi-pronged passing offense. This year, it has been more of a Zay funnel, but still he's even higher in yards per route run. I think he's, as of last week, he was higher than Nico Collins. He was higher than Jamar Chase. He was top 10 overall on PFF. So he can struggle when matched up in some of those isolation routes. I think he hasn't really done a whole lot head to, or he didn't do a whole lot head to head against Joey Porter Jr. in that Week 14 game. The Ravens use him in motion more than any team in the NFL just about uses their wide receiver. So because of his frame, because of his lack of size, I think that would be disqualifying for a lot of people when you think about your prototypical number one. But he's produced like one in a year where defenses have had no reason to really to really worry too much about anyone else on this receiving core. So he's up for a contract extension this year. He obviously, with having earned the second straight Pro Bowl nod, is up for like the franchise tag level fifth year option in 2027. So that's going to be interesting to monitor this offseason. But I think we've reached a point, just considering where the Ravens are in their history and how rarely they've been able to hit on wide receivers, where you basically have to pay this guy like a top 5, top 10 receiver, knowing that the market is going to move so quickly over the next 2 years after you do it.
When you look at the offensive line, I think the last time that we talked to you back when these two teams played, it was what's going to happen at left guard with Voorhees and Emory Jones. It seems to settle down a little bit more, I guess, with Voorhees now. Is he just kind of been outright the better player there?
Yeah, Emory Jones obviously never really got the kind of shot that Ravens coaches, Ravens fans, certainly Emory were hoping for. Just that shoulder injury really messed him up. Didn't give him a chance to come back until I think October. And at that point, Voorhees, despite his obvious struggles this year, had seized that starting job. Ben Cleveland, who actually the Ravens just released yesterday, was never really a factor in year 5 with Baltimore. So, Voorhees, I think it would be kind to say he's anything more than an average starting guard in the NFL. You turn on the tape and you still see too many times where he's just losing his balance, ending up on the ground. The best interior pass rushers can really make it look ugly against him. But, he's a guy who, when he went to the combine a couple of years ago, just despite having a torn ACL,
Right,
put up a freakish number of bench press reps. And when he is good and playing with good leverage and, is feeling like when he's being optimized correctly, he can be a physical run blocker. But it's just, those have been the weak spots of the Ravens: left guard and then right guard with Daniel Faalele. It's just the Ravens thought that they would be some improvement from last year. There really hasn't been. And when you've gotten the occasional bad game from a Linderbaum or Rosengarten or Ronnie Stanley, then you can really start to feel like Lamar Jackson is under assault back there.
Switching over to the defensive side, I guess the biggest question is when you go back to the last time these two teams met, the Ravens played a lot of man in that, a lot of middle of the field closed. The Steelers obviously had DK Metcalf at the time. They popped him down the field. They dared Aaron Rodgers to go down the field. He actually did it several times in that game. Metcalf was a huge part of that. Since that game, however, we've seen the Ravens mix in a lot more zone. Now, particularly against this game against the Packers, I can probably understand a little bit why, because Malik Willis, you probably want to keep eyes on him and the scramble ability, and even so, he still was able to use his legs in that game. This time around, the Steelers won't have Metcalf, obviously. What are you expecting? Are you expecting them to go back and say, okay, Aaron, you got us the first time with the man beaters on the outside, and I'll use DK Metcalf a lot in that game. We're betting that the wide receivers that you'll have in this game, you're not going to be able to push the football down the field. And yeah, we'll play man because we're just not worried about you taking off with the football. Sans the one discount double check kind of take off for the totally unscripted old school Aaron Rodgers touchdown in that last meeting there. What are you expecting from coverage wise? Are they going to line up and say beat us down the field, or are we going to see some of this cover 3, cover 4, and cover 6 like we've seen mixed in some of these games since the last time these two teams met?
Yeah, I think the Ravens will probably want to press their advantage in those matchups and play some man coverage and play some single high. And Dave, by the way, fun fact on that discount double check, a note, I went back and looked at the Week 14 game. Aaron Rodgers had just 2 dropbacks when he didn't have DK Metcalf on the field. One of them was an incompletion. The other one was that 1-yard rushing touchdown, which just kind of made me laugh. Like, hey, you don't need DK Metcalf to have a successful passing offense when you have Aaron Rodgers scrambling and beating a very, very slow defensive lineman to the corner there. But yeah, I mean, like, this has not been a great past couple of weeks for Ravens cornerbacks. Going back to Week 14, it was a season high for A-Rod in passing yards. Then it was a career high in passing yards for Drake May. Then another career high in passing yards for Malik Willis. And, you had Zach Orr, the Ravens defensive coordinator, basically calling out the technique and the eyes of the Ravens cornerbacks, Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins. He didn't, say them by name, but those 2 guys have been the bugaboos in recent weeks. I think since Week 14, according to SIS, those 2 guys have been, I think, the third. They've given up the 3rd and 5th most yards in coverage in the entire NFL. And this was a secondary that was supposed to be a strength because you look at how many guys have these first round pedigrees, and it's felt like it at times, but it's felt like it hasn't felt like it way more this season. So obviously, when you have Marlon Humphrey, I think he's faster than he was maybe a couple seasons ago when he was playing a little bit more bully ball. He's probably closer to 190, 195, and I think that's shown up sometimes with his downfield speed. But obviously Metcalf toasted him a couple of times, and then Nate Wiggins is obviously a legit 4-3 guy who can get unbalanced just because he doesn't have a huge frame. But yeah, I mean, I think the Ravens want to show Aaron Rodgers a flash of color, get him to get rid of the ball, throw those screen passes or those dump offs, and then just rally to the open field, because we know that Kyle Hamilton tackles well, Marlon Humphrey can tackle well, Roquan Smith can tackle well. I just don't know, besides A-Rod really feeling like there's a connection there with Pat Freiermuth, that there's a whole lot to worry about in coverage. And, maybe they felt that way in Week 14, only for Rodgers just to go completely supernova on them. But I feel like if you want to avoid some of the extended play brilliance that we saw from Rodgers in Week 14, then you want to get in his face. And I know that he makes it really tough just with how quickly he gets rid of the ball. But I wonder how much of the failures that he had in that game against Cleveland will make him a little bit more willing to like pat the ball and go through his reads, because this has not been a good pass rush. And if he knows that the second read or third read is a better chance than the first read, which he normally just locks onto in some situations, then maybe that'll be the kind of risk reward proposition that'll benefit the Steelers.
Jonas, we don't talk about him too much outside of, I'm sure, Baltimore circles, but Travis Jones seems like he's been the Ravens' best defensive lineman up front, career high 4 sacks this year to lead the team, which may speak to the lack of pass rush overall. But what has changed to allow him to have more opportunities and just getting after the quarterback more often?
I think opportunity set has come because there's not a whole lot of juice up front. Like, Nnamdi
Mhm.
Madubuike was supposed to be the Batman to his Robin, and then Nnamdi goes down in week 2. We still don't know exactly what his future is in Baltimore, but yeah, it's been like a slow bird for Travis Jones, where he has had some of these games, even last year, where he does look just completely overwhelming, completely overpowering. But double teams can sap some of that strength, and we've seen him slowly, I think, start to figure it out these past couple of weeks. And you see, 7 pressure games, 6 pressure games. And you're like, wow, that he's really starting to figure some things out, and he's just a guy who lives in the weight room. I was talking to Roger Rosengarten, the Ravens right tackle, about him this week, and just talking about kind of the Ravens' physicality, because they've obviously played with a noted level of fu-ness these past couple of weeks. And I just asking about their workout schedule, and he said these guys have to do 2 workouts a week, and so it's just up to you from Monday to Friday, or I guess Tuesday to Friday, how you want to kind of divvy up those workloads with the Ravens strength and conditioning staff. So Roger does his too. Maybe he'll do some auxiliary work, but Travis Jones is in there pretty much 4 or 5 days a week. And I asked him after he signed his contract extension a couple weeks ago, like, when was the longest that he hadn't gone without working out? And he said maybe a week in the off season, and then that's pretty surprising, considering some of these guys give themselves a month or 6 weeks to really rest and recover. So he's just built different. He could be the kind of spiritual successor to Cam Hayward in the AFC North when Cam decides to hang him up. He's just a no frills guy. He's not as much of a spokesman for the Ravens as Cam Hayward is for the Steelers, but he's a guy who could just be that at least B to B plus level player, not just against the run, but against the pass every single year. And I think that's such a rare commodity to have in a nose tackle.
Cam Hayward may outplay us all, Jonas. I don't know. This guy just does not slow down, but point well taken. My last question for you, then I'll let Dave finish things out. One player that Pittsburgh will not see they saw in that first matchup was rookie linebacker Teddy Buchanan, out for the season with tore his ACL covering a punt against the Bengals. Has Trenton Simpson been the replacement, or have they kind of really leaned more on sub packages and Kyle Hamilton as a de facto inside linebacker to replace Buchanan's snaps and role?
Yeah, I think a little column A, a little bit column B. I think they've been encouraged by Trenton Simpson's play when he has been in those nickel personnel. They obviously don't run a lot of base personnel, but he's been around the ball. He hasn't really had any of the kind of chicken with his head cut off moments that he did as a rookie or in year 2. So that's been a good sign. But this is a team that I think we saw it. I forget if Ardarius came back for the first time against Pittsburgh, but we have seen in these obvious passing situations, the Ravens go with like 3 or 4 safeties on the field, and just they're going to dime it up. So that makes Roquan the only on-field linebacker that moves Kyle Hamilton either into the nickel or the slot, either into the nickel or the dime spot, which obviously he usually holds. And they get creative with Cheeto Awuzie, Marlon Humphrey, Ardarius Washington, Malachi Starks, Alohi Gilman, Nate Wiggins. That they just really flood the field with DBs when they feel like the offense has no choice but to pass. So sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. But obviously, I think if the Steelers are, scouting vulnerabilities on this Ravens pass defense, it's what can we do with play action or boots or a little bit of razzle dazzle to maybe put Trent Simpson under some pressure, put him in a bind, because he just, there are some moments where he does kind of flailing out there and he doesn't have the self-control that Roquan Smith does. But I think he's probably less gettable now than he was earlier this year and certainly last year as well.
Jonas, a lot of people look obviously not going to have Darnell Washington in this game, and what a big factor that'll be in the run game. And they have used Darnell Washington in the pass game some and got some good yards after the catch. People are pointing towards, well, just get Pat Freiermuth more involved in this offense and all. But you look at the Ravens as a whole against tight ends, they've actually been not bad. I think they're in the bottom third of the league when it comes to receptions and receiving yards, or allowing less than 10 yards per reception to tight ends. And specifically if they're Pat Fryermuth's got the label of being a zone beater. If they play a lot of man in this, you would think that would help kind of erase Pat Fryermuth. How do you feel they've done against the tight end position overall? And should the Steelers maybe incorporate or take their chances, I guess, in some man situations with either Jonnu Smith, who's really been disappointing overall as far as his production and yards per catch and all?
Yeah, I think those stats really line up with the eye test. Obviously, if you have Kyle Hamilton matched up against a tight end, that's probably a no throw zone for the quarterback, no matter who it is, or no matter what tight end is running that route. Roquan, if he's matching in coverage against a tight end, is usually pretty reliable. Obviously, Alohi Gilman is not that big when he drops into the box and has to cover a tight end, but I think he has this kind of no fear mentality. I mean, it was kind of funny to hear him talk about how he wasn't scared about Darnell Washington before that Week 14 game, and obviously the Ravens do a good job of eliminating Darnell and also just knock him out of that game, unfortunately, with an injury. So I think it would probably be a little bit out of character for the Ravens to be vulnerable to tight ends this year. I don't really remember Harold Fannin doing a whole lot against the Ravens when they played Cleveland, or David Njoku. I think Mike Gesicki might have had a couple catches against the Ravens, but not a whole lot. So Travis Kelce was fine against the Ravens, but I think a lot of that was just good play calls that burned the Ravens at inopportune times. So I think obviously the problem for the Steelers is that the Ravens just have been most vulnerable outside the numbers in recent weeks, and you probably just don't have the personnel with DK Metcalf now sidelined and Calvin Austin, being limited in practice this week to threaten them too regularly. But as we all kind of saw with Aaron Rodgers on that final drive, like he doesn't need a huge throwing window to really thread the ball in there to either Jonnu Smith or Pat Fryermuth, and this Ravens fan base, I'm sure, would tell you like that it would just be perfect. It would be typical of this Ravens team to just give up a lead or a win by the slimmest of margins. And we all know that Aaron Rodgers has no compunction whatsoever about throwing those tight window balls, and oftentimes he's right on target.
Kyle Van Noy, 2 DNPs this week with a quad. You expect him to go on Sunday, and I guess the other one, Rashad Bateman, with an illness is maybe potentially the other one to watch. I would imagine he should be fine by game time. But is Kyle Van Noy going to go this week?
Yeah, I wish I had more info on that. We've seen him in the locker room, which is usually a pretty good sign that he's not just being his entire time is being spent in the training room. A little bit strange that he wasn't even a limited participant on Thursday. To be honest, he's not really a huge part of this defense anymore since they got Draymond Jones, and they've been working in more snaps for Mike Green. Obviously, I think you probably trust him as a run defender more than Mike Green at this point. But I would imagine we would see him out there practice today in about an hour as a limited participant, and then the Ravens, would obviously have those extra 8 hours or so to get him ready on Sunday night. So I think we'll probably see Kyle Van Noy, and as you said, I imagine that unless this is just a a terrible winter sickness for Rashad Bateman, they would also probably see him as well.
All right, it's that time. It's prediction time, score prediction time. Don't you damn reverse jinx us here with go opposite of what you normally would do. 3.5 point spread here, and with good reason, it feels like. And what a weird situation. You got Ravens fans hoping the Ravens lose, so maybe Harbaugh gets fired. You got a larger contingent of noisier Steeler fans than usual, kind of saying it'd be good for the Steelers to lose this. Maybe they'll move on from Tomlin. That's all just fan related, obviously. Which way do you see this going, and how about a final score in this one? And one final question: Harbaugh and Jackson together in 2026.
Yeah, I think so, and partly because I do think the Ravens will win this one, which would give John Harbaugh a little bit of room. Maybe not for the entire fan base, but at least a little bit of grace. My prediction for this one was Ravens 23, Steelers 13. I don't know how much to read into the Pittsburgh ground game performance in Week 14. I thought that the Steelers would be able to run the ball better. They could not, and now they won't have Darnell Washington to kind of mash the edge there as a de facto 6th or 7th offensive lineman. And if Pittsburgh is going to be in a game where it can only average 2 or 3 yards per carry, and then you're putting the entire onus on Scotty Miller and MVS and Adam Thielen and Pat Freiermuth against this solid Ravens middle of the field pass defense. I think that's a lot, and I just don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be willing to hold on the ball long enough to maybe find those zone crevices. Just with that time to throw, he's going to want to get the ball out quickly. I don't know if he's going to be able to change his stripes in time for this game. I think if he does, I think certainly the Ravens could be vulnerable because as Alex talked about on Thursday, the Steelers pass protection unit has really improved, and I feel like they probably should have a pretty solid advantage over the Ravens pass rushers, especially those edge rushers. But I just feel like even if the Derek Harmon return helps this this Steelers run defense like I think it will, I just feel like the Ravens run game is in a good enough spot, and having Lamar to get you out of jail enough times, and with the weapons on this team being serviceable enough that the Ravens should find themselves in the red zone a couple times. And, if they don't score like they didn't score in Week 14, I think they went 2 for 6 in the red zone in that one, then we're probably talking about a much closer game. But I just feel like the Ravens' advantages on defense against the Steelers' offense are too pronounced for me to really expect a Ravens loss, which of course means that Lamar's going to throw 2 interceptions, lose 1 fumble, and the Steelers are probably going to throw a special teams touchdown and win this by 13.
All right, great analysis. Hard to argue with it as usual. Jonas, we certainly appreciate you coming on the show twice with us this year. We'll check in with you early in the offseason, get your thoughts on what way you think they might go in the draft with the Ravens and all, but we'll obviously stay in touch with you. And Happy New Year to you. Enjoy the game, and we'll be talking to you sooner rather than later, I think. So once again, thanks for joining Dave and Alex on the Terrible Podcast.
Appreciate you guys having me. Thanks as always. Appreciate it. And have a great New Year.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. Our special thanks to Jonas Schaefer for giving his time before heading out to Ravens practice on Friday. Again, find his work over at the Baltimore Banner. Check out their podcast and follow him on Twitter at Jonas_Schaefer. That's SHAFFER. Always appreciate Jonas and his time, Dave.
Absolutely. And, we lost John E. I think he retired a couple years ago. He was our normal guy to cover the Ravens and all. And boy, Jonas really has stepped in flawlessly for him twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, like going back to, I think, last year when Ravens Steelers were in the playoffs there. At the very least, hop on the Twitter machine and say hi and thank him for his contributions this year, and we've become pretty good friends, I guess, with Jonas. Good relationship with him, as Alex mentioned. They had Alex on their podcast on Thursday, so get by and listen to that if you have some time. And we'll be checking in with Jonas, probably not too long after the season ends, as we get into draft talk, to kind of get an eye or an ear on what the Ravens are thinking towards the draft. And then obviously, if anything happens with Harbaugh or Lamar Jackson or anything other earth-shattering with Ravens news, we'll have him back on. So shout out to Jonas, and please let him know that you appreciate his time.
Dave, there will not be a third Steelers-Ravens meeting this year. It's just the second one, but it is the granddaddy of them all, I guess, to use the Rose Bowl intro, since that was played yesterday. Winner take all, Sunday night, Acrisure Stadium. The winner captures the 4 seed. The AFC North will host the playoff game. The loser goes home, and their season is over. Pittsburgh 9-7, Baltimore 8-8. The Steelers win or tie this game, they will advance. If Baltimore wins, of course, they get into the playoffs. Let's start with this Ravens offense. They have really dialed in that run game. Derrick Henry, 36 carries for well over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in Week 17 against Green Bay. They're leaning on him. We assume they're going to lean on him again, even with Lamar Jackson back. Dave, how do you attack and stop and minimize this Ravens run game and offense in general?
Baseball bats, lead pipes,
right.
tire chains, I mean, look,
Metaphorically for any
yeah.
lawyers out there.
I don't know, maybe literally.
Okay. Dave says, I'm
brass
leaving the
brass
case.
knuckles. I'll say this: you better put the foil on for this one. At the very least, the most interesting component of this, as we kind of mentioned at the top of the show, there is you have Derek Harmon for this one. You did not have Derek Harmon. Now, was Derek Harmon, and look, and I think you spoke to this as well too. You go back to the 90. What did Henry have in that first game? The 95,
98.
98 and all. As far as allowing a guy that kind of yardage, you did a good job overall. If I told you right now, Alex, that Derrick Henry will have how many carries did he have in that one? 23? 20?
I can check. It was probably about there. Let's see real quick. He had 25.
All right, 25 for 98. If I told you right now, I guaranteed you one stat from the game. It could be that and maybe one rushing touchdown in there. Would you take it?
I wouldn't. I apologize. Actually, it was 94. I thought 98 for some reason, but I would take that. But Baltimore also ran for 217 as a team. And so would you take that? That is a harder pill to swallow.
Right. I'm definitely not taking that. But holding him down under 100 yards, specifically if he has more than 20 carries in a game, would behoove yourself. And Derek Harmon, that should help having him back. And I imagine Mike Tomlin's been needling Derek Harmon all week about the last couple of weeks about how much better the Steelers' run defense is with Derek Harmon. He's probably saying, "Is that true? It's your time to prove it." And look, you go back to the whole reason Derek Harmon's a Pittsburgh Steeler at this point. It stems back to what
Derrick Henry.
Yeah, Derrick Henry here. So part of the reason you went out and got two defensive linemen in the draft this year is to help in the run game. We've seen semblances of greatness against the run since the Buffalo Bills game. They're gonna have to prove it. It all starts with Derrick Henry, and obviously with Patrick Ricard, you're going to see a lot of him. The Ravens are going to come out. And unlike the Steelers, who I hope to see some wrinkles on, we'll get to that in a little bit here. But the Ravens are going to come out and try to be who they are, what they do best, and that's running the football, not having to put Lamar Jackson in a lot of must-have passing situations where he's got to drop back, hold on to the football, get hit, potentially fumble the football away. So it goes without saying, you've got to stop the running game. And then if they start getting on the hoof with that run game, then as we talked to Jonas about the play action element of it, they'll put Ricard back there. They're almost 2 yards better in the passing game per play when Ricard is on the field. Play action becomes a big element on it if they're in second and short type situations. Heck, they'll might even open up this game with Ricard in the backfield, maybe go play action and try to hit I don't know, Andrews on an over, likely on an over, something along those lines. But if you don't, if Derrick Henry runs downhill early in this game, it could make for a long night at Acrisure Stadium.
It's really a matter of which Derrick is better or more impactful, Henry or Harmon. That's kind of the theme of this game, and you're right. The main reason why Derrick Harmon is in Pittsburgh is because Derrick Henry left tire tracks all over Pittsburgh's defense in the wildcard game last year, which led Art Rooney to talk about getting back to fixing the trenches and the run defense, which led to Pittsburgh be really front seven heavy with not just Harmon, but Y.A. Black and Jack Sawyer were 3 of their first 4 draft picks in 2025. So you really brought in a guy for a variety of reasons, for Cam Hayward's age and depth and all that kind of stuff, obviously, but certainly was influenced by how last year ended. Think about this game, which team's going to run weak side better? I see a lot of that weak lead, weak ISO type runs from Baltimore and Henry behind Ricard. And I've mentioned to Jonas a couple times now that Ricard's played his highest snap count the last 2 weeks. And Jonas is correct that those two guys are kind of linked together. Ricard and Henry, they're part and parcel, but who can you defend those weak lead runs where they're going to put the formation and put 2 tight ends to the right and then they're going to run left behind Ricard? Can Pittsburgh stop that? That's going to be the key. Will Derrick Henry get 35 carries again in back-to-back games? Dave, trivia question for you. Who was the last NFL running back to get 35 carries or more in back-to-back games?
Oh,
It's not Derrick
Lord.
Henry. You would think it's Derrick Henry. It's
I don't
not him.
know. I'll just take a wild guess. Priest Holmes?
It's a good guess. It's not. It's from that era, though. It was Eddie George in 2000. So there's a name for you. He's a head coach, I think, somewhere right now. Maybe Bowling Green. So Derrick Henry's had 35 and 30 carry type games. So he's certainly a guy that can shoulder that workload. But I imagine they're going to, the question really is, can Baltimore beat themselves and get away from
Right.
Derrick Henry? And can you try to facilitate that by either, I don't want to say jumping out to a lead might take him out of their game plan, but can you get some early run stops? He has fumbled quite a bit, Henry has this year. He's been better in recent weeks, but had a bad fumble against New England. So can you rip that football out? Of course, they had that fumble on Henry, the first carry, last year's game, last year's win over Baltimore. Herbig punched it out. So, Pittsburgh should really be ball searching on Henry in this game.
Be an interesting thing to look at after the game is over, when we get the charting and all done. But how can your defense play in the few plays that Derrick Henry is off the field for?
Well, like you said, Keaton Mitchell is certainly no chop liver, and he had that 50-yard run in that first game, and he's got 5.9 yards per carry. That's the highest average by a running back with at least 50 carries this season. So he is certainly a threat, and a different kind of threat that you have to account for.
Right. And then, obviously in the passing game as well, too. How can you do in the instances when Derrick Henry's not on the field, in the situations that those happen? Those could end up being key moments in the game, assuming that you're able to at least hold Derrick Henry down under the 100-yard mark.
Yeah, when it comes to that pass game, Zay Flowers is their top guy. Both teams only have one receiver over 500 yards receiving this year. Metcalf for Pittsburgh, who of course will not play in this game, and Flowers for Baltimore. And he is just so quick twitch post catch. That's where he really can beat you. There was that one curl he caught against Green Bay. He makes the corner miss, turns upfield, and gets a bunch of yak. He's got 9 broken or forced missed tackles this year. That's tied for most of any receiver in the NFL. He's not a big guy, so he's doing that by making you miss rather than breaking a tackle and running through you. So being able to be tight on him post-catch is going to be really key.
Absolutely. Now, the Steelers did get the rare win against, and I rattled off those stats of Derrick Henry this year of 19 carries or more, and how, and even going back to last year with him, how successful they have been. He had the 25 carries, obviously, in that first meeting between the two teams, 94 yards, no touchdowns in that one. That was obviously a key component, especially coming off of a game where he had, how many did he have against the Packers? 4 there. If Derrick, can we say right now, if Derrick Henry has 30 carries in this game, the Ravens won 30 or more?
Probably just the war of attrition. It means they're ahead. Could you sit there in not a shootout, but a close game and steal one late? It's certainly, you don't want to get Henry to that mark if you can all help it.
Right, and you would have to think in the game situation, the Steelers would have to be ahead, because the last thing you want to have to face is Derrick Henry getting carries 26, 27, 28, 29 late in the game when the Ravens have the lead.
If you're Pittsburgh, if you win the coin toss, do you take the ball and sit there and say, let's try to limit the number of possessions they're going to get? That's probably my strategy in this game.
Yeah, and once again, even though the Steelers won that game last time, they only had they ran 51 offensive plays, and the Ravens ran 77.
Yeah,
in
can't
this
happen.
one.
Can't happen again.
Yeah, it feels like that can't happen again. It feels like you got away with one, and it all obviously stems back to the kind of the Isaiah Likely play with Joey Porter there and all, and they had a drop down there and as well. So yeah, two things I think are detrimental to the Steelers in this game. Derrick Henry getting to 30 carries, and the Steelers only running 51, or having a ratio of 51 to 77 offensive plays. And that's a long way of answering your question. If the Steelers win the toss in this one, I want them to take the football first because here's the other thing that would be great to see, that streak of 60, what's the streak up to now? 67, 60, 68 of not having more than 7 points. It would be a hell of a damn time to get more than 7 points in the first quarter of a game, specifically if you can take the football down the field to open the game up on, I don't know, 10, 12 play drive, eat up some of the clock, and at least shorten the game in the aspect of maybe how many times Derrick Henry can touch the football on the run.
Now, it is fair to point out Pittsburgh's 51 plays in that first game. They hit some explosives in that one, which naturally limits your drives and often your plays. So if Pittsburgh could replicate that, then maybe you'd sign up for it. But being at a negative 26 play differential, given that Henry, the way that he's able to wear you down. And of course, if you receive the kickoff, I know Baltimore gets the kickoff to start the second half, but you don't want Henry to get going early. You don't want to have to tackle him all game. You don't want to let him kind of get the attrition going as soon as possible. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm going to take the ball to start this one. But finishing this with this Ravens offense, the pass scheme has shown as set play action is a threat. The over routes, the crosses, the level concepts, very much part of the offense. Sometimes the isolated receiver backside 3x1, whether that's Mark Andrews as kind of a nub or say Flowers or even DeAndre Hopkins. Don't forget about D-Hop, man. He's a great combat catcher. Doesn't have big production this year, but he's made some plays for them. The one weakness I would look at, the offensive line, is always that fish of the week that defensive line coach Carl Dunbar talks about. Who is that weak link? And to me, it's undoubtedly right guard Daniel Falele. And he struggled in that first matchup, took a lot of heat for it. And so can Derek Carman, who should see a lot of him in this game. They did not have that matchup the first time. Obviously, that'll be big for him and Benton probably too. That's a guy that you have to make struggle in this game.
All right, 79 yards after the catch the Ravens, I believe, had in that Week 14 game. Chuck Clark was tabbed with giving up 25 of those. So overall, you did a fairly decent job after the catch against the Ravens the first time around. Your tackling has to, it goes without saying, be spot on again this time around as part of their passing game when they have to pass, assuming that you can do enough in slowing down the run game. And it's hard to imagine the Steelers winning this game, not winning the turnover battle by at least 2. And I think it goes back to, once again, can you maybe rip the ball out of Lamar Jackson 1 or 2 times via a strip sack or something, or you got to go ball searching after some of these catches as well too that they might have. But you absolutely have got to get the ball out. We saw this defense get 2 takeaways against the Browns and not capitalize on that, and should have had a third one that ended up in the end zone by Herbig as well too. Anytime that the football's up in the air, specifically batted or tipped or whatnot, it will feel like a extreme wasted opportunity if the Steelers don't come down with said football.
Yeah, it's felt like Pittsburgh has batted fewer passes in recent weeks. I don't have the numbers on that, but that's sort of the eye test. I'm sure offenses are adjusting and are cognizant of what Pittsburgh has done, Cam Hayward in particular. So can you get back to that? Baltimore certainly has their weaknesses. They turn the ball over at a pretty high clip. They have, 9 turnovers in their last 4 or 5 games, They were clean against Green Bay, and that was important, but they can certainly turn the ball over and certainly have against Pittsburgh. They had one in that first matchup, I believe it was. Their red zone offense has struggled. They're 29th in red zone play, which is surprising, well under 50%. So those are certainly some areas Pittsburgh has to continue to win in.
And look, if you don't do a great job on first down in this game, specifically going back to the play action aspect, and it really opens up the playbook away from the run for the Ravens if they're in situations where they're 2nd and 4 or 2nd and 2, those instances. So you damn sure better be, I'm guessing we'll look hard and long at first down play average for the Ravens on offense after this game. You want to get them in 2nd and long type situations and go from there, I think.
Trying to pull up the first down stats to see where Baltimore and Pittsburgh rank in terms of their first down success. And you're right on the money, Dave. Baltimore tied for first in the NFL in first down yardage at 6.6 yards per play. That's equals the Rams and the Seahawks. Pittsburgh at 5.4, a number that I think has gotten better over the season, but still ranks a little below average.
Right. I mean, what are the Ravens on second and under 4 or less,
I can be your jester and look it up here. You want 2nd and 4 or less?
Right.
Probably still pretty good, but
I would think very good.
I'll let you know right now. 2nd and 1 and 4 this year. Where do they rank? They are they're down a little bit. They're actually Dave 30th in that situation at 3 yards per carry. So
Interesting.
that's surprising. Yeah, but a good first down offense, and that's where things start. And got to mention the tight ends too, likely as you said, and Mark Andrews. The numbers haven't been big this year, but I'm always worried about those guys. I think those guys always come to play against Pittsburgh, even though likely had that drop touchdown in that first matchup.
Derrick Henry's birthday is on Sunday.
Is it really? I didn't know that.
I believe that's what a Twitter machine told me. Let's
hopefully you can
January
spoil
4th. That. January 4th. And that would indeed be Sunday. He'll turn 32.
Well, hopefully Pittsburgh makes him feel every bit of that age in this game, does not turn back the clock to look like a 22-year-old Derrick Henry. Any final thoughts on this Baltimore Ravens offense, Dave?
No, stop the run, stop Derrick Henry, and go from there.
All right, flipping over to the Ravens defense, and we talked about it with Jonas. Maybe the most interesting part is what will be the Ravens' coverage plan. They were a man-heavy team most of the year, including against Pittsburgh in Week 14. Pittsburgh had a bunch of success beating man coverage since the Ravens have run a lot more zone. And so will they stay in that zone personality, or will they man up given that Cleveland had so much success in man coverage against Pittsburgh in Week 17? That's really what I'll be watching for. What will be the Ravens' approach in coverage?
That's one of the $1 million questions heading into this. Obviously, if they play more zone, it opens up potentially the opportunity for Pat Zone Beater Fryermuth, I think is his new nickname now, to potentially get mixed into this thing more so than that last meeting against the Ravens. All told, though, the Ravens, as we talked with Jonas about, they haven't done a bad job against tight ends as a whole this year. If I were them, I would play a lot of man, a lot of single high. I want as many. I'm not going to let the Steelers try not to get any traction in the running game. I will dare Aaron Rodgers to do what he did the last time, push the football down the football field more than 15 yards in the air, and specifically now that they don't have DK Metcalf, the other speed threat, obviously Calvin Austin coming off the hamstring, but as I also pointed out recently too, Calvin Austin in the last, I think, 7 games that he's played in, 9 catches for 90 yards. It feels like if the Steelers do face a lot of man-type situations, I think Calvin Austin said, yeah, good, I hope they do, then Calvin Austin's going to have to show up in this game, it feels like, down the field. How is this team going to get explosive plays against man coverage if indeed they see that without DK Metcalf in this game?
So that's the $1 million question on Pittsburgh's side of it all. So that's going to be the mission in this one. Guys have to step up, make a play, win their route against the Ravens secondary that has talent. Maybe they've not always played to that ability, but there's pedigree there, and Humphrey and Wiggins, and of course Kyle Hamilton. Probably see a lot of Pat Fryermuth in this game, and Gilman and Starks, their rookies. So it sounds so trite and so cliche, but someone has to make a play. Someone has to step up. That's really what it comes down to.
All right, beyond that component of it, this team does not have Darnell Washington now, and that's a big component, obviously, of this game. Now, hopefully, as we mentioned, they will have Isaac Seumalo back. They'll be able to do the things that they've been doing with Spencer Anderson as much, if not more, than they've done in the past. Will they or should they go multiple offensive line eligible type players? And I kind of I don't know. It gives you the opportunity maybe to talk about the potential of an extra offensive lineman being active for this game in Driscoll, who has some experience, I think, as a extra guy. Should this team lean heavily into eligible, more than one sometimes on plays, eligible offensive lineman?
You read my mind, Dave. I have the article already written for the weekend for Saturday. I think Pittsburgh should use some 7 offensive line packages in this game. That is legal for anyone wondering. The Chiefs used it earlier this year. It'd be Anderson as that typical 6 offensive lineman. And then, as you said, Jack Driscoll being that 7th. He's got 21 snaps in his career as a tackle eligible. you just have so much value in that jumbo package of Washington and Anderson. I crunched the numbers. Pittsburgh is averaging 4.9 yards per carry this year when Anderson and Washington are tight ends. Their success rate's almost 60% in those moments. And so you can't lose that. It's so hard to ask Johnny Smith and Pat Freiermuth to block. Pittsburgh themselves have been running more weak side. They were doing that in that Browns game. So which team runs weak side better might be the victor in this game. But it wouldn't be for a lot of snaps. I'm not saying to do it as often as Pittsburgh's done it with Anderson and Washington, but if it's 3 or 4 high leverage snaps, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, goal to go, that could be the difference in the game. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm going into my bag of tricks in this one. I'm going 7 offensive line. I don't care that signals run. It's a big physical game. Impose your will. That's going to be the winner of this one. So I'm doing it, Dave. I'm going 7 offensive linemen.
All right. Now, obviously, you'd have to come up with an extra inactive potentially, but that shouldn't. We'll see how things shake out on the injury report.
I got a list for you. I had it because I thought about that because you are going to have to address an extra offensive lineman. Now, I don't know the whole health of the team. I don't know elevation, so I'm just giving you the standard 5. Let me just pull it up here really quickly.
Will Howard obviously won.
Yeah, Will Howard is your emergency third quarterback, so nothing too crazy there. The names that I jotted down.
Caleb Johnson would have to probably be 1.
Yeah, I got Will Howard, Caleb Johnson, Roman Wilson, assuming Austin's return. Wilson simply doesn't play, so there just isn't the value there. Trey Flowers, if Pierre comes back, Pierre, if injured, then him, and Jeremiah Moon as my 5th, with Watt coming back, assuming that Watt comes back.
All right, that match shakes out. Then obviously, who would potentially be your elevations for this game?
It's a little murky not knowing the health of this team. You probably won't need as many people because you have Seumalo back and Driscoll is on the roster, so no elevation needed there. Would you elevate a corner potentially if Pierre was down again? Would you elevate Deshaun Jameson? But if Eccles comes back, then you probably don't need to elevate there because you have Eccles and Ramsey as your 2 slot guys. So my belief right now is you probably
might
don't
not
have to elevate anyone.
Yeah, they might not elevate anybody on Saturday. All right, I love your math. It checks out with the inactives there. I'm 100. We have got to, and the thing about running weak side to strong side, at least if you got that beef up there, you might have more of an option to run strong side, right?
Yeah, you just can't run strong side if it's running into Johnny Smith and even Freiermuth in line. It's just, I know that the Ravens don't run a true 4-3, and so it's not some bigger defensive ends. Like last week, you're facing Garrett and Wright and those guys, and those are big, big people. This week, you're going to face Van Noy and Mike Green and Tremont Jones, who are a little bit smaller, but still, it's just hard to really make inroads. Because I'm really concerned about Pittsburgh running the ball. I think Baltimore running on them in general is tough. Pittsburgh ran for just 34 yards in that first outing with Darnell Washington in a game that was close, in a game in which they led and won. So you got to get this run game going. Got to do everything you can. Without Metcalf, you gotta have a run game. You gotta have a real strong ground attack. And so if that means 7 offensive linemen for some key moments, I'm doing it.
And obviously, the more you can control the football, more plays that you can run. That's less potentially that Derrick Henry might be on the field for. So, we'll get our answer from that 90 minutes before kickoff with the inactive list. But I'm 100% on board with you. I think that's at least one thing that this team should do on offense now that they don't have Darnell Washington. Another thing, there is no tomorrow, right? Like Rocky said, there is no tomorrow in this. Any wrinkles that you've been holding on to or things that you've played with in the past need to be exhibited in this game, especially with no DK Metcalf. Could we see Warren and Gainwell a couple more snaps on the field together to either run out of that or use either in the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good point. I certainly would endorse and embrace it. Now, they've done that this year. I don't know exactly how many times. I'd have to check our charting. Probably, what do you think the number is? Maybe I can try to check that here quickly. 30 times this year they've had a pony package of Gainwell and Warren on the field at the same time.
All right, I don't know for sure. I could pull it into playtime stats on NIGS, I guess, in lineup detail.
Okay.
Here.
I mean, we have the charting from Tom Mead too. I don't know if you want to go with that or just give it that.
Well, the easy way would just be to sort Tom Mead stuff.
Yeah. According to Tom, he's got 27 snaps of pony with Gainwell and Warren sharing the field this year.
All right, and I would imagine, obviously, Darnell Washington on the field for every one of those snaps, or most of them?
No, he was off actually for quite a bit. Actually, Jonnu Smith is the predominant tight end in those packages, which is just another Arthur Smith affinity thing.
Right. So hopefully you would not go that route with Johnny Smith there. But my whole contention is maybe, you could do a lot of things with that. You can line either one of those guys out, out wide in the passing game, maybe take advantage of a one-on-one matchup with a linebacker or a safety, I suppose, in some instances there, and take advantage, especially if the Ravens want to play man coverage in those. You could have some fun with both of them in the backfield, pitches, or the escorts. We got to see the escort screen in this, I think, too, to gain well. You're going to have to, I think, get creative with personnel groupings and then working to get the ball in the hands of Gainwell and Warren, potentially in the passing game out of that. So that's yet another wrinkle in addition to the extra offense, multiple eligible offensive linemen. And let's see if they can get Warren and Gainwell on the field. And once again, we're not talking about 14 times a game, but at least some, and get some plays run out of it. See if you can maybe crack an explosive play or two off of that.
And the whole point about Gainwell and Warren on the sharing the field is just get your best players on the field as often as possible. We just keep it simple. Play your best players, let them make plays, and you can do that whenever you're down DK, whenever you're down Darnell Washington. It should just naturally lend itself to who's our best guys to go win a must-win type of game, and it's Gainwell and Warren have been your best offensive playmakers, especially down Metcalf and Washington. One thing I would do, not to get so offensive line centric, but would you throw Spencer Anderson a touchdown pass? Could this be the week?
Yep.
They kind of,
Yep.
I think they tried that in the Lions game, but if you go 7 offensive linemen, you kind of get a little, confusion created with all the eligibles reporting. They've gone unbalanced this year. They tried that touchdown pass with Anderson whenever they were in an unbalanced look there. Could you kind of maybe mess with Baltimore's head a little bit, get somebody with their eyes wrong? I don't want to, again, I talk about getting the best players the ball, then I say throw the ball at Spencer Anderson, but situationally, you take a chance. Like you said, I think you'd pull out all the stops in this game.
You got to have multiple different wrinkles here. You can't leave it. You can't have the what if of now. Obviously, it should be things that you've worked on.
Yeah,
but
they practice it.
Right. Yeah, I'm for it, and maybe even how creative maybe can you get out of this tush push now too?
Yeah, I don't know what really there is left to do that Pittsburgh hasn't done. They've kind of done everything.
Other than Hayward maybe throwing the ball, huh?
Yeah, which maybe that's getting a little too crazy, but no bad ideas in a brainstorm, I guess. I mean, the bottom line is just to kind of bring it back and make it simple. Pittsburgh has to run the ball at a really high level. Like, I think they have to run the ball even better than they did against Cleveland, which I would just say was okay. It was acceptable, but you need more than acceptable. You have to have a run game that looks. What game this year do you think it's kind of comparable to in terms of the type of run performance Pittsburgh must display in this one, Dave?
Oh wow! I mean,
Detroit, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, just hitting those explosives.
Yeah. I mean, you had what 245 yarders in that one, and look, you could, if you block them up right, you can crack them on this defense, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Minnesota, where you didn't have the explosive, but you felt like your run game was strong. That was, of course, no Warren in that game. That was Gainwell kind of really breaking out. Chicago, you ran for $186, but it's probably going to be closer to a Detroit level performance because you really just can't trust your pass game to be the driver in this game. It's more the passenger. Your run game has to be your driver.
And if Ravens play a lot of single high man, you're going to have to at least try your shots down the field. So, can you run some stutter and goes? Can you run some of those? Can you go back to that pick again and try to get maybe somebody like Scotty Miller or Calvin Austin on an out and up down the sideline? There's even though you don't have DK Metcalf. And if you do see man coverage in there, you're going to have to try to take your shots down the field at least a few times to keep them honest. So can you connect on any of those? It would behoove themselves to get MVS 1 or 2 down the field against man. I'm not holding my breath on that.
Yeah, he just hasn't made any plays this year.
Right,
He's had so many chances. Not that you can plan for it, but I think if you're going to get explosives in the pass game, it's going to be off the extended play. You saw that in the first Baltimore game, the one to Metcalf to open up the second half, one to Skoranek for less yards, but was a big play. Your offensive line should be able to contain this pass rush of Baltimore. It's been pretty weak this year. They're not blitzing a ton. They're dropping guys into coverage. They don't have any marquee rushers. They have nobody more with more than 4 sacks this season. So if your line can hold up, can Rodgers create some scramble drills and find guys open that way? That might be your ticket.
And if you, in a rare instance that they maybe run some cover 2 or some situations where middle of the field open, hopefully Aaron can identify that early. And there's 2 people, Adam Thielen and Pat Freiermuth, that should be able to attack vertically. And we have not seen. Is this this would be an ideal game for Jonnu Smith one-on-one to win 1 or 2 times?
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, Baltimore ran cover 2 on the Christian Watson touchdown to open up their first drive against Green Bay last week. So I don't know if they're going to play that same coverage again. But if they do, then yeah, that's where Muth has to go make his money.
All right, and obviously you can't turn the football over on here. You got to possess the football. You got to come out and shoot hot on third downs as well too. But this is all going to stem off, I think, of how good of a ground game the Steelers can get going early. I'm lockstep with you with the extra offensive lineman, and you just try to beat it out that way with them, and hopefully have a much better. You're going to have a much better running game than you did last time against the Ravens.
Oh yeah, if you run for 34 yards again, it's blouses probably in Baltimore's favor. My last note on Baltimore's defense, I know his play's been a bit up and down. Jonas spoke to that, but I'm still watchful for Marlon Humphrey. He's on a heater right now in terms of an interception in each of his last 3 games. It's the longest active streak by any one in the NFL currently. He's the only defensive back only player in the last 2 years with 10 interceptions and 4 forced fumbles. To me, he's a playmaker every step of the way. He's versatile. He plays inside, plays outside. Which is big because they won a lot of chess pieces in the secondary. They're going to go 6 DBs. They're going to move Hamilton around. They're going to have Ardarius Washington, who forced that fumble on Russell Wilson last year, right? He's an impact guy a time or two. So I'm really watching up for Humphrey because he's always seems to be making the big play, and he cannot make the big play in this game.
All right, why are the Ravens where they're at right now? Part of it's got to do with the takeaway giveaway. They go into this game actually -2, and that's not conducive of teams normally making the playoffs. However, you do have San Francisco down there at -5. Who else is in the playoff picture with a negative number? Nobody.
I assume not many teams. Seattle, -4. Playing for the 1 seed.
Oh, yeah. Seattle, -4 there. So generally that doesn't work out well, but there obviously are. Look, it comes down to this one game. You better win the turnover battle, and for Pittsburgh specifically, they better win this by at least 2.
And Pittsburgh has done a great job taking care of the football. I wrote about that in my reasons for optimism earlier this week, which had a warmer welcome than what I thought. So I was appreciative of that from the readers. Pittsburgh +11 in turnover differential this year, just 1 turnover in their last 4 games. Aaron Rodgers has not thrown an interception since November 9th, and so need those streaks to continue.
And 6 of their 11 giveaways have been fumbles by the Steelers.
Yeah, so ball security, they tried to fumble it away even more against Cleveland, three of those, and that was sloppy, so that must be cleaned up. I'm sure Baltimore identified that Pittsburgh did not turn the ball over, but put the ball on the ground 3 times, and they're going to go ball hunt again. The other thing for the offense, Pittsburgh is 0-5 in the red zone their last 2 weeks. They've been a really good red zone offense for most of the season. They were 1 point the number 3 ranked red zone offense. They're now 13th because of those struggles. Can't kick field goals. And even though it's not going to be probably a high-scoring game, got to punch it in. You can't leave 4 points on the field, so red zone offense will be really critical. Baltimore's a good red zone defense. I think they're top 5. And so that's a situation that should really be circled in terms of who will win in those big time moments.
And a low-scoring game obviously favors the Steelers a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I think you'd think so. But, Baltimore's won low-scoring games. Pittsburgh's won low-scoring games. It's all kind of 6-1.
In other words, it's hard to imagine the Steelers popping up 29, 30, 31 in this game, right?
Yeah, if Pittsburgh's going to win this game, it's going to have to be a lower scoring game. So point taken on that. Also, operation better be clean. No more dropped holds, no more bad snaps, no more issues for Boz. You can't have any sort of negativity there.
All right, and how about the third phase? They better win the third phase of this game.
Yeah, I mean, kick coverage has been really good this year. Coverage units in general have been good. Can Pittsburgh ever get a good kick return? I think they're, I don't know, 29th in kick return average this year. They've been so bad these last 2 years under the new dynamic kickoff. Of course, you got your starting running backs back there and Warren and Gainwell having to do it, which is less than ideal. The Ravens have a good punt returner in Wester. They're a rookie. He's done a nice job this year, so got to make sure you contain him.
The Steelers punt return average is, hold on here. What is it? Down in the league at 9.1, ranked 20th in the league. Their kickoff return average is not good, Bob. 23.9, 29th in the league. Yep, you were right.
Yeah, so it was like dead last or maybe 30th last year, 29th this year. Not really optimistic that you'll pop one. I guess really from a coverage return standpoint, just play even. Don't give up any big return. Probably won't get a big return, but fine. And then can Waitman punt well? Big game for Corliss Waitman. Thought he did a decent job last week. He'll need to be at his best in this finale.
All right. The Ravens on defense, 36.45 on third downs, ranked 9th in the league as far as that goes. The Steelers are 41.96, ranked 25th on third downs in the league.
And by the way, Waitman sitting at 45.8 yards per punt this year, so he's not going to break Bobby Joe Green's record. So I will have to wait another year for that record to fall.
All right. A big time special teams play would certainly help matters for the Steelers on Sunday night.
No question. All right, Dave, any other final thoughts about this game?
No, we ought to be pretty up on covering the Ravens over all these years and specifically what they're going to try to do on both sides of the ball, although there is a little bit of a mystery as far as the coverage that they'll run. But what do you think they do? Do you think they run a lot of man?
They've been coming out and playing a lot of zone on early downs. I think they're going to stick with their personality, go with what they know. So zone on first and second down, and then man up in third and short red zone. That's kind of my guess. But you got to use some man zone indicators, a lot of motion. Put the back out sometimes, bring it back in, kind of maybe get a feel. I know the teams will lie and defenses will fool you. Baltimore also does a lot of those sim and pressure looks that they'll drop out of. They're dropping 8 guys in the coverage quite a bit. So just be aware of that. But my guess, and you get into a game, your first 15 kind of feel it out, but zone on early downs, man in those marquee third and short moments.
All right. We'll be charting that.
All right, Dave, let's hear from our friends over at MyBookie before we make our picks for Week 18. And, of course, we'll end things with our picks for this Steelers-Ravens game. But first, our friends at MyBookie.
All right, football playoffs are here, Alex, and MyBookie is where you turn bets into bankroll. Everybody's betting these days. The NFL is in full do-or-die mode, and obviously the Steelers versus Ravens fits that definition. College football down to the last few teams, and the Super Bowl is now just right around the corner. If there was ever a time to get in the game, it's right now, and MyBookie makes it stupid easy to play. One account, one wallet, bet the spread, live bet the second half, hit the casino during commercials. It's all in one place at MyBookie, and you've got all the power at the palm of your hand. Go to mybookie.ag now and use our promo code TERRIBLE. That's promo code TERRIBLE and get your first bet covered up to $500. If it doesn't hit, you use your bet back bonus token and run it right back again. Don't just watch the playoffs, make them pay off for you as well too. And obviously we're tickled pink to have MyBookie back as a sponsor, a Friday sponsor of the Terrible Podcast, sponsoring our picks against the spread. And remember, when MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only at MyBookie and mybookie.ag. And once again, we hope that you use promo code TERRIBLE to take advantage of their bet back bonus program.
All right, Dave, for the final time this regular season, this year's flown by, let's make our picks.
All right, we shall start first and foremost with Let's see the Saturday games. Carolina Panthers playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, this is for the NFC South title, and I guess it depends on what Atlanta does and whatnot. There are some other scenarios, I suppose, where I think both teams can get in, but look, all eyes will be on Tampa Bay hosting Panthers on Saturday. Buccaneers laying 2.5 at home against the Panthers.
Let me show Carolina some respect here. Give me the Panthers.
I'll show Baker Mayfield and that wide receiving core some respect. I will lay the 2.5. So we're different right out of the gate there. Another good game. Seattle Seahawks on the road playing the San Francisco 49ers. The Seahawks 2-point road favorites against Brock Purdy and company.
For the 1 seed, the Niners were my NFC champion pick to begin the year. I'll stand by them. I'll take the Niners.
I will actually go with you. Normally, I'd bet Seattle on the road here. I like what the 49ers can do offensively. I think they win this by a field goal. So I will take the Seahawks are favored here. So I definitely want that +2. Give me 49ers along with you +2. Saints on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons laying 3.5 points at home.
Yeah, Falcons with a big upset. I like what Tyler Shuck has done. I'll take. This one's tough. Give me the Falcons with Bijan.
Yeah.
Give me Atlanta.
I'm with you on that one. I laid a 3.5 because of Bijan and company there with that one. So we're in step there. Dallas Cowboys on the road against the New York Football Giants. The Cowboys are laying 3.5 on the road against the G-Men.
Yeah, I'll take Dallas. I think Dak's going to play. I'm not sure if he should, but he'll play. So give me Dallas.
I'll take Dallas, lay the 3.5 points there. How about the other AFC North game? Cleveland Browns on the road against the Bengals with Myles Garrett still hunting for the sack record. 7.5 points. The Bengals are favored in this one at home against the Browns.
Give me the Browns to cover. Does Garrett get the record, Dave?
I think so.
I think so too.
I will take the Bengals lay a 7.5 in this one. I'll jump on Joe Burrow being able to throw against that defense here. I'll lay the 7.5. Colts on the road against the Houston Texans. I think the Colts are starting. Who's the kid over there?
Riley Leonard.
Yeah, Riley Leonard. No Phillip Rivers in this one. Texans laying 10.5 at home against the Colts.
I thought that Rivers had some classy comments about not really wanting to play and pass up Ben. It would kind of need an asterisk to it. Just a nice thought there from two guys in that 04 class. Normally divisional game, big line like that, I would take the underdog, but to me, the Texans, that defense against rookie quarterback, it just, that math is mathing.
Yeah, the math is not mathing there. I will lay the 10.5 points with you with Houston. How about the Titans on the road against the Jaguars? Jaguars laying 13.5 against Tennessee.
Give me Tennessee. They're playing better ball lately. I know Jacksonville, certainly could have a lot of, they're playing for the division. There are a lot of possibilities where they could end up. Give me the Titans cover.
I'll go the other way. I'll say the Jacksonville Jaguars blow them out. I'll lay the 13.5. Green Bay Packers on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings laying 8 at home against the Packers, who are at least in the playoffs.
And starting Clayton Tune in this game. So I'll take Minnesota.
I'll take Brian Flores versus Clayton Tune, and I'm with you. I will lay the 8 in that one. Chargers on the road against the Broncos. Broncos laying 13 at home against the Chargers.
And that line is big because the Chargers are resting their starters, including Justin Herbert, which is probably the smart move, even though they could do some wild card seeding. It's just probably not worth the risk. I'll take Denver.
I'll take Denver later, big number in that one as well, too. Dolphins go on the road against the Patriots. Another big line here. Patriots laying 10.5 against Miami in what could be, I guess, Mike McDonald's last game.
Yeah, Quinn Ewers really surprised me with how well he played last week. I don't know if that's going to happen again. Again, these big lines in divisional play. Of course, every Week 18 game's divisional play. I'll take the Dolphins to cover. I got to make up some ground on you because I think you're taking the Patriots.
I'm taking the Patriots late at 10.5 there. So, all right, Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. Is this Kenny Pickett versus Chris Oladokun?
That is crazy to think about, those former Steelers quarterbacks, and apparently Aiden O'Connell is gonna rotate in with Kenny Pickett, so I don't know
Right.
what's happening there. This game will be watched by tens of people. What's the line?
Chiefs laying 5.5 on the road in Las Vegas.
Give me the Raiders.
I'll take the Chiefs, cover that 5.5 there. Big game for Travis Kelce, I think.
Is this his last game?
I think it's very possible. Yes,
I don't know.
I will say I think it is. Yes.
I'm gonna say no. I see
All right.
he comes back. He does not want to go out on this kind of note.
All right. Detroit Lions on the road against Chicago Bears. The Bears laying 3.
This one's tough. This one's where? Detroit or Chicago?
Chicago.
I'll take Chicago.
I'll take Chicago. Ben Johnson revenge game, right?
Yeah.
There. I'm with you. I'll lay the 3. Jets on the road against the Buffalo Bills. Bills laying 8 against the Jets.
But Josh Allen's not gonna play. Give me the Jets.
No faith in Mitch Trubisky, huh?
If you want to take faith in Mitch, feel free.
I'll take the Buffalo Bills lay the 8 points in this one. Commanders on the road against the Eagles. The Eagles laying 4 at home against the Commanders.
Give me the Eagles.
I'll take the Eagles lay the 4 there as well too. How about the Cardinals go on the road to play the LA Rams? Rams laying 8 at home against the Cardinals.
I'll take the Rams.
I'll take the Rams lay the 8 along with you. That leaves one game left. Game number 272 of the NFL regular season, the finale, Sunday night in Pittsburgh at Acrisure Stadium. The Baltimore Ravens are laying 3.5 on the road.
I just look at Pittsburgh's offense and wonder. I think Pittsburgh's defense can make some plays. I think they're going to calm the run game down. I'm not going to hold Baltimore to 20 yards rushing, but I think they're going to keep things in check, have a better showing than the 217 they allowed. Lamar, what's his mobility? What's his comfort level is a fair question. I just wonder in Pittsburgh's offense. I don't have a lot of confidence they can run the ball. I think running on Baltimore is always tough for Pittsburgh, even though they have had some success over the years, 34 yards in that first meeting. Pass game without DK Metcalf. I think that Ravens defense is still pretty stout across the board. The pass rush is an issue, but the defense is still good. So all that to say, just to get my pick out there, which I think people will be happy about because I got Baltimore winning this one 23-19, kind of a funky score, and people will be happy because I have been literally the opposite and wrong, I think 5 weeks running. So by this logic, that means Pittsburgh will win the game. So though I literally already have people asking me on YouTube to not pick the Steelers in this game before I make my prediction video. And you're getting your wish here. I'm taking Baltimore by 4.
All right, so you're picking them to cover that number as well, too. Get Up this morning on ESPN had a graphic. Mike Tomlin as underdog versus Ravens since 2020. 7-1 outright and 7-1 against the spread against Baltimore since 2020 there. So let's start with that. Second, it's hard to have, and I said this at the beginning of the week, it's hard to have much confidence whatsoever. The loss of Darnell Washington, not having DK Metcalf. You're playing a Ravens team that feels like they got a stay of execution. You got the Derrick Henry factor. There's a lot of reasons to think that Baltimore will win this game and cover this spread easily. I based my decision off of I want to be right. All right. Before this season started, my final prediction for the Steelers was a 10-7 record and them making the playoffs. Although I did have, I think, Baltimore winning the division, but I had the Steelers making the playoffs as a wild card team. But I did have them at 10-7. I didn't obviously wasn't right up and down the line as far as the record. But I'm going to stupidly have my faith in Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin to all those wrinkles that we talked about with the extra offensive linemen, with having Gainwell and Warren on the fields more so. I think Aaron Rodgers snaps out of it. I think we get Perk Rodgers in this one, at least to a degree where he can complete some passes down the field, maybe to MVS, maybe to Pat Freiermuth, maybe to Adam Thielen, to just enough explosive plays. I think the Steelers get a turnover or two out of Lamar Jackson in this one. Once again, this is this is stupid for me to do, but I want to be right. I'm sacrificing a one game right prediction for the opportunity to be right in one game and on the
What a
season.
sacrifice. We thank you, Dave, for your sacrifice of being right to be right.
I have this 2017 Steelers in a low scoring game. Chris Boswell kicks the game winner late in this game to get it done. So
like true game winning kick or like a couple minutes left game winning kick.
How about just down to the final seconds last minute game winning kick with a game tied 17 all. Chris Boswell.
How far?
47 yards.
Hash middle.
They'll line it up right down the damn middle for them.
All right. I like it. There you go. We're going to get one of these predictions right. So,
one of us will be right, and unless there's a tie, which would behoove the Steelers, obviously, here, one of us will be right, and I'll be right at least with the Steelers making the playoff. Did you have them making go back to your prediction?
Yeah, I had to think the same as you. I had 10-7, second place, wild card team, playoffs, and winning a playoff game was my season prediction. So I would love to be wrong to be right.
All right. I have no faith in my prediction.
So you're pulling a full Chewbacca defense. It does not make sense.
I am. It does not. It does not make sense. It does not make sense. Maybe I think you run an instance where Derrick Henry's around 22, 23, and maybe they start passing a little bit. Maybe the Steelers win the time of possession. Actually, in this one, I don't have a lot of faith. I'm not making a lot of sense in this prediction, other than to think that, damn it, Mike Tomlin, get this damn team in. Because look. What is the majority going to be in this? They're going to be on the Ravens. Heck, we saw NFL.com crew outside of Daniel Jeremiah. 9 of the 10 have the Ravens winning this game. I think 3 of the 4 on Get Up this morning have the Ravens. The popular pick without and it's hard to battle it is to pick the Ravens to win this game.
Well, let's act it out I think we forgot to do last week, but as we'll do this week. If Pittsburgh wins this game, why do they win this game?
Let's start first with Pat Freiermuth exceeding getting right to 500 yards receiving on the season. What does he need? Like 65 for that to happen, I think. So that's a starting point there. So 65 yards receiving for Pat Freiermuth. 100 total yards from scrimmage. No, I'll go 90 or more total yards of scrimmage from Kenneth Gainwell. More than 65 yards from scrimmage from Jaylen Warren in this one. Let
me ask you this. Give me the Aaron Rodgers stat line in a Steelers win.
He has to throw the ball less than 30 attempts. So 68% of 28 or 68% completion percentage on 29 pass attempts, sacked twice, no interceptions, 2 TDs.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. So still got to make some plays in the end.
201 passing yards.
All right, just over 200. I mean, I think put simply, for Pittsburgh to win this game, it's about the run game. It's finding ways to be able to have an established ground game that keeps you on schedule, that gets some drives going. That's going to be the way to run and the way to win offensively. And then just, to Pittsburgh's credit, man, this is a very Pittsburgh thing to do. They lose to Cleveland one week, they go out there and beat Baltimore. They have had success against Lamar better than anybody else. He's got a negative touchdown interception ratio against the Steelers, the only team who's got a negative ratio against. Pittsburgh, they win tight games. They win those close games. They win those weighty moments. It's Tomlin's superpower, his voodoo, whatever you want to call it. Harbaugh's not really shown that. And so in a game that we both think could be, pretty darn close, Pittsburgh seems to often pull through. I know they didn't last week, but generally they do, especially when it's Steelers and Ravens.
Mm-hmm. Can you make that Ravens offense put the ball in the hands of Lamar Jackson in the passing game maybe one too many times and not in the belly of Derrick Henry one or two more times?
Yeah.
So
get a takeaway.
Look, I mean, as a whole, these are two mid teams though, right? Correct?
Yeah, but I'm not even thinking about that in this game.
Right.
Throw it all out when it's Steelers Ravens playoff game. Essentially, I don't really care about the midness or how good they are in comparison. It's mono y mono.
But even though you picked the Ravens, would you be stunned if the Steelers somehow, some way figure out a way to win this game?
No, especially because I picked Baltimore, which means that Pittsburgh will probably win this game with how
Right.
I've been picking. No, because it's a very Steelers thing to do, and Baltimore certainly has their weaknesses too. We've outlined that. Their turnovers and Pittsburgh protecting the football. Pittsburgh is getting healthier, even though they'll be without Metcalf and Washington. T.J. Watt plays, that is obviously massive, and Seumalo, and if Eccles and Austin can return, those are all boosts and benefits. So, no, I'm not going to be stunned. I mean, my confidence is relatively low, but I'm just kind of cynical Steelers fan over here. But, I've been proven wrong many times before.
It's a big deal that Seumalo be back for this game, though, right?
Yeah, not just for a man, but like I said, the flexibility of Anderson, really getting to focus and be full time at 6 offensive linemen, not having to do this kind of back and forth with Pete. That alone would be nice.
How many times will we see multiple offensive linemen report as eligible in this game?
Like 7.
You think that many, huh?
Oh, I mean, if it's multiple offensive linemen reporting eligible, you got 7 on the field. Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying you're saying 7 offensive lineman packages is what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't saying 7 as my answer. I don't know if they're going to do it at all. That's just my suggestion. I'm not sure there's any evidence that they will. I would love to see it 3 times or so.
I would love to see it as well, too, and I think that's a good number, 2 or 3 times on this. All right, we got past that. Let's, in what potentially could be the last segment of a regular season for reader emails, let's pop out a couple of these real quick. Dave M. writes in, who do you blame more for the offense's inability to be consistent? Coach T, the OC, DC, Rogers, they all play their part. I know, but I believe Coach has to wear the crown. The way he has spoke of Roman and Caleb and Peyton and others really makes me think he sees what most of us see, but is unwilling to take control of these other guys and make the necessary decisions. Roman is the guy to look at with DK out, specifically his words, and your OC or wide receiver coach puts him out there for 6 routes, and your quarterback is looking right at him, running wide open, but refuses to throw it to him. Number 88 is the best pass catcher on this team, hands down, and doesn't get a look outside of the 2-minute drill. At what point does Art Rooney says this running joke is not funny anymore? I also have an idea for an off-season segment you guys might find interesting. Once a month or so, select one fan on the show, somehow random YouTube contest emails, whatever, and you invite them on to discuss what they think the top few problems are with the team and how they would address them. He says Dave's knowledge of the salary cap and contracts, etc., coupled with Alex's scouting and own knowledge, would really make for some great offseason build conversation as we watch the team's real moves take place. Thanks a ton. I listen to every show, sometimes the same one a couple of times when you really get in the weeds. Keep up the tremendous content. All right. Thanks, Dave, for the email there. Let's go back to the more important of this one. Who do you blame more for the offense's inability to be consistent?
It's always layered, but I think the reader summed it up well. Mike Tomlin has to wear that. This has been a long-standing issue with the offense. So, roster construction, all that, it all reflects on Tomlin.
I agree. I think it starts with the head coach there and all. So the thing about Roman and Caleb, don't be surprised, David, if both those guys are inactive, especially if it plays out with the extra offensive lineman and Jack Driscoll getting a helmet for this one. So it is unfortunate. The paths both those players have taken this year, it's not so surprising with Caleb being as how you have Gainwell and Warren. But obviously, you went into the season thinking a little bit more playing time, a little bit more production for Roman Wilson. So we'll see what happens if either one of those guys are active, if both are inactive, or what have you there. Tyler Armis writes in, if we find the crowd chanting "Fire Tomlin" again after this Baltimore game, we will be talking about the possibility of Tomlin leaving eventually. be that by firing or contract expiration. Tomlin has a ton of control with the Steelers, and you guys at Steelers Depot have kind of benefited from him just a bit because the stability within the organization allows for some sense of predictability by you all. If he were to be let go or fired, how does that affect you guys in terms of being able to look into the crystal ball for what moves this team could make, schematics, etc.? He says, it makes me laugh thinking about you guys talking on Raiders Depot in another universe because of the amount of work that must go into learning a new coach and their tendencies at the level that you guys dive into the Steelers. You guys are the best in biz. All right, Tyler, thanks for the email there. I will say this as I read that through, what jumped through my head. It just feels, even if you were to change, let's say both Tomlin and Omar Khan were for some reason to go out the door this offseason. The way, and let's just say maybe Andy Weidel gets the G. They still have a certain way it feels like that they scout during the draft, the type players that they look for, their methods of free agency, organizational principles, that I feel that we would still be able to lean on to a fairly high degree overall.
There would be some maybe overarching principles that would stay, but it'd be a big shakeup. I mean, just for example, Mike Tomlin probably hits the pro day trail more than any other head coach in the NFL. And so you would probably lose that with whoever that replacement at next head coach would be. So it'd be a pretty big shakeup. I think it would really, for at least initially, really hamstring kind of our crystal ball searching and watching.
It would be different. It would be something that we together have never done.
Yeah, literally since the site has existed, there's been one head coach, which is, I guess technically this is Baltimore Depot would have been one head coach because Harbaugh was hired in 08. I don't know when Harbaugh was hired when the site was created, but getting in the weeds about that kind of stuff. Those are the only two teams where you could have this website for that whole time and have one head coach. So it would be a big change.
All right. Bryce says, hey, guys, it's Ravens week, and it comes down to this. Here's my overarching thought about Tomlin and the future of the Steelers. In today's NFL, if you're going to keep Mike Tomlin as your coach moving forward, then you better get him more dudes on both sides of the ball, dudes that he can play more static with and just let them play. If you give him a roster where he has to be much more tactical to help his personnel engineer victory, then you get what you get. If the Steelers want future success with Tomlin, then you got to go the Eagles route, surround the coach with enough talent that he can play more safe and conservative and still win. Look, the fact of the matter is that this team's still more than likely going to not be huge players in free agency. They're still going to respect their hierarchy of APY for the most part. We did at least see them go outside the box and the whole DK Metcalf thing. So we have seen a few different things within here as of late. But the fact of the matter is, here they are still going into the final game, looking for a 10th win, and at this time on the cusp of not making the playoffs this time. So any thoughts to everything that he said? If Tomlin goes, then they got to get him more dudes, build the roster differently. Perhaps I guess he's kind of talking about free agency.
Well, there was a reference to being more conservative. I don't know if Pittsburgh needs to be more conservative. I don't think that's the issue. I think maybe their conservatism has been partly the issue often. So I'm not sure. Yeah, it's obvious if you have more talent, better your team is likely to be. So that's always the goal.
All right, second part of this, for the Steelers to win this game against Baltimore, who has to be your offensive player of the game and why?
I mean, it's obvious to say Aaron Rodgers, but in a game like this, it's so cliche, but these are the reasons why you bring in an Aaron Rodgers for moments like this. But to give the non-obvious answer, I think the offensive line, just as a collective, has to be really at their best, get a good push up front, get this run game going.
Yeah, I agree. And if we're not going to call a group, I think Gainwell needs a big game.
Or Warren. I think in these physical games, I mean, Gainwell certainly has a big part to play, but I need Warren to be physical, protect the football, and kind of plow ahead.
All right, Brett Nile back in here. I had a follow-up question about your discussion on the last podcast. You discussed the likelihood that Johnny Smith will not be back next year. Alex talked about cutting him, but my question is, do you think he still has trade value to a tight end needy team? He was a Pro Bowler last year and doesn't look like it's physical erosion of skills. It just looks like bad scheme fit. I think a team would gamble on getting the 2024 version, especially for a low round pick. Say pick in the 2027 draft with 12 picks in this draft already this year. The team may prefer 2027 picks. Who in their right mind, I guess, would want to trade for that contract overall is the first thing that pops into my mind. Johnny Smith next year is scheduled to earn a $7 million base salary. He will be, I guess, getting close to 32 years old. Is a guy like that, could a guy like that be traded for anything with a team thinking they can implement him into their plan at a $7 million salary?
No. The only guy who's ever traded for Johnny Smith is Arthur Smith, who's done it twice in Atlanta and in Pittsburgh. And Arthur Smith, unless Arthur Smith becomes a head coach somewhere, then or OC somewhere else, then I guess maybe theoretically. But no, I just don't see the trade value there. Now, is the trade value for Pat Frymouth? I think there would be, but I really have no appetite to trade Pat. I would cut Johnny Smith and let Frymouth and Washington be my tight ends next year.
All right, let's take one more from Caleb Zaborski back in here. Good morning, fellas from Fort Myers, Florida. What are your greatest concerns going into the Sunday night game? Is his first question. My answer to that would be yes. There's a lot of them. I mean, look, it starts with not letting Derrick Henry run downhill from against you all game. That's first and foremost. The second would be is the Steelers have got to run better than they ran in the first game against the Ravens, and then obviously on top of it, how is this team going to get explosive plays through the air with no DK Metcalf? Especially if they see a lot of one-on-one type situations. So it's not just one. There are multiple greatest concerns, and that's why I think that you're going to see it so lopsided with people picking the Ravens to win this game.
There actually have been a couple more Steelers picks than I thought there would be. Not from the NFL Network panel, but in my weekly national media post, I think there were 4 or 5 people picking Pittsburgh. So I thought that was more than I thought. Obviously the run game, in terms of Baltimore's run game, is probably a chief thought. I still think Pittsburgh will manage that decently. My chief concern is how Pittsburgh will just simply move the ball offensively. I struggle to see kind of the way in which they're going to find success. If they can't run the ball, they can't pass the ball. Your options become pretty limited at that point. My big brain analysis there. My other concern, and it's something you mentioned, made a really critical point on maybe Monday, that my terrible take is around today is not a concern about the game, but is your lasting image of your 2025 season going to be a Pittsburgh Steelers loss at home, another collapse, losing to your arch rival, where Mike Tomlin gets booed off the field, and that's your lasting moment into an off season of a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions? What a completely sour note to go out on for a team that made some big swings, that had high aspirations, that was 4-1, led the division for most of the season, beats Baltimore 3-game winning streak. You basically lock this thing up in week 17 to go from that to a loss that ends your year. Man, that's a gut punch.
Is there a scenario that the Steelers lose this game and the lasting image isn't either booing or fire Tomlin? I guess other than people leaving it at halftime because it's a blow.
That's one way to go.
Really? I mean, there is a high probability that is the lasting image of the regular season, right?
If they lose this game, I don't know how the reaction is anything but, unless there was some sort of crazy referee blunder that muddies the final play. But yeah, if you lose, like I know Mike Floyer talked about, well, if they lose close, then that's, I guess okay. Like there's no moral victory in a winner-take-all game. It's win or lose, nothing else matters. You lose by a point, you lose by 40. I understand that the idea of getting blown out is optically worse than losing a close game, but losing is losing, going home is going home. So if they lose this game, that's going to be the reaction. It's going to be the talk on Monday, Mike Tomlin's future, all that jazz.
All right, we got through the emails there. What are we, slightly over 2 hours?
I think we're well over 2 hours at this point, but told you it'd be a long show.
All right, Alex, you and I, let's see, we got the Saturday games coming up, to keep us busy, and then obviously a long wait on Sunday. We will have all the usual stuff on the site, game threads and
And just
inactives.
real quick, sorry to interrupt, but if Pittsburgh does win this game, if your prediction is correct, who's the 5 seed? Is it Houston? Is it Buffalo? Is it the Chargers? Probably Houston, but something
Yeah,
to consider as well.
yeah,
We'll know that answer before kickoff because Pittsburgh's the last game of the season. Whoever wins this game will know who that 5 seed will be.
right, and also another note is win, lose, or draw, or whatever, right after the game is over with, we will officially know the Steelers' opponents. Obviously, a lot of those have already been set in stone because of the rotating schedule, and but I think there's 3 opponents still that are based off of finish in division. So we will have the full list of Steelers' opponents. Right when the game ends there to look ahead to, and hopefully the Steelers come out on the winning edge and they're playing a first division winner type opponent type schedule. But obviously the other option is to play the second place schedule. So anyway, we will be back on Monday bright and early to wrap up after no sleep what happened Sunday night at Acrisure Stadium against the Baltimore Ravens. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, and that takes you to PayPal. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, follow the directions, sign up that way, get a username and password, and hit the login button to utilize that. So until Monday, Happy New Year once again to everybody, and thank you for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.